Story 1. After 3 hours cooking my wife's anniversary dinner, she walked in with her friends and said, "Stop trying to be romantic. It's pathetic. You look desperate." I set down the wine and started blowing out every candle one by one. The room went completely silent. Her sister looked mortified. Her best friend stared at the floor, but something had fundamentally shifted inside me during those 30 seconds of public humiliation. "What are you doing?" she asked, her confident tone wavering slightly. Stopping, I replied, gathering up the flowers I'd bought, "You just taught me something valuable. Romance is pathetic when it's one-sided. So I'm done being pathetic." I walked past all three of them, tossed the flowers in the trash, and ordered pizza instead. "We can eat like roommates from now on, pepperoni or cheese." The confusion on her face was priceless. She'd expected me to apologize, to scramble, to explain myself. Instead, I'd called her bluff in front of an audience. That night, she tried the usual damage control about overreacting and having a bad day. But I'd hurt her perfectly the first time. Message received. Here's what my wife didn't know about the man she'd just humiliated. I'm a senior forensic accountant at one of the city's largest firms, earning $127,000 annually. I spend my days analyzing financial patterns, documenting evidence, and building bulletproof cases that stand up in court. My specialty is untangling complex financial relationships and exposing the truth through methodical analysis. I've helped dozens of clients navigate divorces, business disputes, and asset recovery cases. I understand exactly how marriages work as financial partnerships and what happens when those partnerships dissolve. More importantly, I've been quietly documenting our financial relationship for months, not out of suspicion, but out of professional habit. Every romantic gesture, every dinner date, every weekend trip was recorded in my personal expense tracking system with time stamps, receipts, and categorized entries. 5 years of data showing a crystal clear pattern. I paid for approximately 78% of our shared expenses, while she contributed 22%. I covered all entertainment, most meals, all gifts, all travel, and the majority of household expenses beyond basic utilities. My income puts me in the top 15% of earners in our city. I own 60% of our home's equity, since I'd provided the entire $85,000 down payment and covered most mortgage payments. Our joint accounts showed deposits from my salary, covering her shortfalls month after month. I had documentation proving I'd subsidized her lifestyle to the tune of roughly $47,000 over 3 years. Every dinner at expensive restaurants, every weekend getaway, every piece of jewelry, every surprise gift, all meticulously tracked in spreadsheets that would make any divorce attorney salivate. She earned $52,000 as a marketing coordinator, but she'd grown comfortable letting me handle the financial heavy lifting while she enjoyed the benefits. What she'd just done was declare war on someone who had both the professional skills and financial independence to win decisively. She wanted to find out what romance looked like when it wasn't subsidized by someone she considered pathetic. The next morning, I implemented what I privately called Operation Roommate. I didn't bring her coffee in bed like I had every weekend for 5 years. When she came downstairs expecting her usual service, I was already finishing my cup. "Coffee's in the kitchen," I said without looking up from my newspaper. She stared, waiting for me to jump up and serve her. When I didn't move, she huffed and made her own coffee. I could feel her watching me, trying to figure out if this was punishment or some kind of game. It wasn't. It was clarity. For the first time in years, I saw our marriage for what it really was, a one-person performance where I was both the actor and the entire audience. That afternoon, she tested my resolve by mentioning how her co-worker's husband had surprised her with concert tickets, clearly fishing for me to do something similar. Instead of taking the bait, I just nodded. That's nice for her. The look on her face was fascinating, like she'd just realized her favorite puppet had cut its own strings. By Sunday night, she was getting antsy. No flowers, no surprise dinner plans, no romantic movie suggestions. Just me reading my book, completely content in my own space. "Are you going to stay mad forever?" she finally asked. "I'm not mad," I replied. "I'm just not pathetic anymore." Big difference. That's when I saw the first crack in her confidence. She'd gotten so comfortable with me chasing her that she'd forgotten what it felt like when I wasn't. The first week of my new approach was like watching a behavioral psychology experiment unfold. She actually seemed relieved initially. No more surprise lunches at her office costing $35 each. No more random flower deliveries at $45 weekly. No more texts asking about her day. She got exactly what she'd asked for, and at first she was thriving. I watched her tell her mother over the phone, "He's finally growing up and giving me some space. It's so much better this way." She said it loud enough for me to hear, probably expecting some kind of reaction. I just kept folding laundry like she was discussing the weather. But here's what she didn't anticipate. When I stopped being romantic, I didn't just stop with flowers and fancy dinners. I stopped with everything that wasn't absolutely necessary. No more good where she'd been. She was getting the complete package of what she'd requested. My forensic accounting background had taught me to approach problems systematically, so I created a new personal expense tracking system, specifically for our post-anniversary relationship. Every shared expense would be documented and split exactly 50-50. Every financial interaction would be recorded with the same precision I use for court cases. I set up automatic Venmo requests for her half of utilities, groceries, and any shared activities. The first test came when she mentioned wanting to try that new expensive restaurant downtown. In the old dynamic, I would have made reservations and happily covered the $200 bill. This time, I suggested we check if they took separate checks first. Her face went through several interesting expressions. Since when do we worry about separate checks? Since we started being practical about what marriage actually is. Isn't that what you wanted? I also canceled the standing flower order I'd maintained for 3 years. $12 weekly might not sound like much, but it adds up to $624 annually. Money I was now saving by not being pathetic. By day 10, the cracks started showing. "Are you going to ask me about my presentation today?" she said one morning, clearly fishing. "Do you want to tell me about it?" "Well, it went well," she said, waiting for follow-up questions that never came. "Good for you." I went back to checking my phone. The silence that followed was beautiful. She stood there for a full minute, probably waiting for me to engage, to show interest, to be the attentive husband she'd been taking for granted. When it became clear I wasn't going to play that role anymore, she grabbed her purse and left without another word. That evening, she tried a different approach. She cooked dinner, which was unusual since I'd been handling most of our meals for years. Nothing special, just pasta with store-bought sauce, but she presented it like she'd solved world hunger. "I made dinner," she announced, clearly expecting praise. "Thanks," I said, serving myself and sitting down. No compliments, no appreciation speech, just acknowledgement. When she mentioned the groceries cost $47, I immediately Venmo'd her $23.50 for my half. The weekend brought the real test. Saturday morning, she announced she was going shopping with friends. In the old days, I would have asked where and when she'd be back, maybe offered to pick her up. This time, I just said, "Have fun." She lingered by the door, clearly expecting more engagement. When it didn't come, she tried again. "I might be late." "Okay, like really late." "Understood." She left frustrated, and I spent the day doing exactly what I wanted. I fixed that leaky faucet I'd been putting off, organized my tools, and read an entire book without interruption. It was the most peaceful Saturday I'd had in months. When she returned with shopping bags totaling $340 according to her receipts, I didn't ask to see what she'd bought or offer the usual compliments. I was too busy calculating how much money I was saving by not subsidizing her retail therapy. My professional training kicked in during week 2. I started treating our relationship like a case study, documenting behavioral patterns and responses with the same methodical approach I used for financial fraud investigations. The data was fascinating. When I withdrew what she'd labeled as pathetic romantic attention, she immediately began exhibiting attention-seeking behaviors. Comments about male co-workers complimenting her outfit, mentions of her ex reaching out on social media, references to how attentive other husbands were compared to other men. Each comment was a fishing expedition, waiting for me to show jealousy, concern, or any sign that I still cared enough to fight for her. My response was the same every time. "That's interesting." Then I'd go back to whatever I was doing. The lack of reaction was driving her crazy. She'd gotten so used to my emotional investment that my indifference felt like living with a stranger, which in many ways I was becoming. I started documenting everything in a detailed log. Time stamps of conversations, her behavioral changes, financial transactions, everything. If this marriage was heading toward divorce court, I wanted bulletproof documentation of exactly what had transpired and when. 3 weeks in, she was completely losing her mind. The woman who had confidently declared my romantic efforts pathetic was now desperately trying to get any kind of emotional reaction from me. It was like watching someone realize they'd thrown away a winning lottery ticket. I'd started hitting the gym again, not for her, but because I finally had time for myself. The $89 monthly membership I'd canceled 2 years ago because she complained about the expense was back in my budget. I was reading books I'd wanted to read for years. I'd even started learning guitar, something she'd always dismissed as a waste of time. The $200 guitar and $60 monthly lessons were investments in myself that I could finally afford without her criticism. One evening, she tried a more direct approach. She appeared in the bedroom doorway wearing lingerie like something out of a movie. In the old days, I would have dropped everything and showered her with compliments. This time, I glanced up from my book and said, "Going somewhere special." The confusion on her face was priceless. "I thought we could spend some time together. We spend time together every day. We live in the same house. I mean together. I closed my book and looked at her properly. "If you want to have relations, just say so. We don't need costumes and performances anymore." Those were part of the romantic gestures you found pathetic. She deflated like a punctured balloon. This wasn't the script she'd written in her head. She wanted the old me, the one who would have swept her off her feet and made her feel desired. Instead, she got practical honesty. "You used to make me feel special," she said, her voice smaller than usual. "I used to try. You taught me it was pathetic, so I stopped." During week 3, the financial reality of our new arrangement started hitting her. When her car needed a $400 repair, she asked if I could help cover it like I always had. I suggested she set up a payment plan with the mechanic. When she wanted to go to her friend's birthday dinner at an upscale restaurant, I asked if we were splitting the bill before making reservations. When she mentioned wanting new clothes for a work event, I didn't offer to take her shopping like I used to. The woman who had grown accustomed to a lifestyle subsidized by someone she considered pathetic was discovering what her actual budget looked like. Her $52,000 salary, after taxes, and her personal expenses left very little room for the luxuries she'd taken for granted. 1 month in, she finally cracked completely. It happened on a Thursday evening when I came home from the gym. She was sitting at the kitchen table with papers spread everywhere, clearly waiting for me. "This wasn't casual, this was an ambush. We need to talk," she said before I'd even set my gym bag down. "About what?" "About this, whatever this is that you're doing." I grabbed a water bottle from the fridge and leaned against the counter. "I'm not doing anything, I'm just existing, same as you." "No, you're punishing me. You're being vindictive and petty because your feelings got hurt." That's when I knew we were about to have the conversation that would define everything. She'd finally dropped the pretense and shown me who she really was underneath all the manipulation. "My feelings got hurt," I repeated slowly. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly. You humiliated me in front of your friends, called 5 years of romantic gestures pathetic, and now that I've stopped doing those things, I'm the one being petty. You're taking it too far." "I'm taking what too far?" "Not buying you flowers, not planning surprise dates, not telling you how beautiful you look every morning, which part of stopping the pathetic behavior is too far." She stood up, her voice getting louder. "You know exactly what you're doing, you're withholding affection to manipulate me." I almost laughed. "I'm not withholding anything, I'm just not giving you something you never valued in the first place. You can't withdraw money from an account you already closed. That's not what I meant when I said those things." "Then what did you mean?" "Because I've been trying to figure that out for weeks." She started pacing and I could see the real her emerging. The mask was slipping and what was underneath wasn't pretty. "I meant you were being too much, too intense, too needy, like you couldn't exist without my approval. And now I exist just fine without your approval. Problem solved. But now you don't care about anything I do." There it was. The truth she'd been dancing around for a month. She didn't want me to stop caring. She wanted me to care silently, desperately, without bothering her with the evidence of that caring. "You're right," I said calmly. "I don't care what you do because caring about someone who thinks caring is pathetic is exhausting. I never said caring was pathetic. You said my romantic gestures were pathetic. Those gestures were how I showed I cared. So by extension, yes, you did call my caring pathetic." She was getting frantic now, realizing that her words had consequences she hadn't anticipated. "Fine," she exploded. "You want the truth. Sometimes your romantic stuff made me feel suffocated, like you needed constant validation that I had loved you back. It felt desperate. Now we were getting somewhere. The real conversation was finally happening. So you felt suffocated by being loved," I said. "That's your complaint." I felt suffocated by being needed so much. There's a difference. Not really. Love without need is just friendship with benefits, but I understand now. You wanted to be wanted, not needed. You wanted to feel special without having to make me feel special in return. Her face went red. "That's not fair, isn't it? When's the last time you did something romantic for me? When's the last time you surprised me with anything? When's the last time you made me feel like I was more than just a roommate who pays most of the bills?" The silence that followed was deafening. She couldn't answer because we both knew the answer was never. I'd been the only one investing in the romantic side of our marriage for years. "I show love differently," she finally said, but her voice lacked conviction. "How?" "By accepting everything I do for you without reciprocation. By criticizing the way I express love while offering nothing in return." Another silence. She was scrambling, trying to come up with examples that didn't exist. "I cook sometimes. I clean. I manage the household. Those are adult responsibilities, not expressions of love. Roommates do those things." She sat back down, deflated. For the first time in our marriage, she was forced to confront the reality of what she'd brought to the relationship versus what she'd taken from it. I pulled out my phone and opened the expense tracking app I'd been using. "Let me show you some numbers," I said, turning the screen toward her. "In the past year alone, I've spent $8,400 on what you called pathetic romantic gestures. Flowers, surprise dinners, weekend trips, gifts for no reason, concert tickets, theater shows. That's $700 per month of my income dedicated to making you feel special." Her eyes widened as she saw the detailed breakdown. "Now, let me ask you this. How much have you spent on romantic gestures for me in the same time period?" She couldn't answer because we both knew the number was zero. "I've been subsidizing a lifestyle you've grown comfortable with while you've contributed nothing equivalent in return. And when I finally stopped, you called it punishment. But here's the thing, I'm not punishing you. I'm just not rewarding you anymore." The conversation continued for another hour, but the damage was done. She'd finally been honest about what she wanted, all the benefits of being loved without any of the responsibility of loving back. She wanted me to care secretly, to pine for her from a distance while pretending I didn't need her emotional reciprocation. Over the next 2 weeks, she tried everything: love bombing with elaborate meals I had to pay half for, sudden interest in my hobbies that felt performative, attempts at physical intimacy that seemed more like negotiations than genuine affection. But I'd already checked out emotionally. The man who used to beg for her approval was gone, replaced by someone who knew his worth. Her sister called me during this period, having heard about our problems from my wife. "She says you've changed," she told me over coffee. "She's worried about you." "I have changed," I replied. "I stopped accepting less than I deserve. She thinks you're being cruel. I think 5 years of one-sided romance was cruel, but I'm done being cruel to myself." Her sister was quiet for a moment. "She never appreciated what she had, did she?" "No. And now she's finding out what life looks like without it." 2 days later, I found divorce papers on the kitchen table. She'd made her choice, and to her credit, she'd made it cleanly. No drama, no last-ditch emotional manipulation, just a quiet acknowledgement that she couldn't live with the man I'd become, and I wouldn't go back to being the man I'd been. "I can't do this," she said when I found her packing. "I can't be married to someone who doesn't love me." "I never said I didn't love you," I replied. "You don't act like you love me. I don't act desperate for your approval. There's a difference." She stopped packing and looked at me. "What's the point of love without romance? What's the point of romance without respect?" She had no answer for that, and we both knew why. The divorce proceedings were surprisingly smooth. My meticulous financial documentation made asset division straightforward. Since I'd paid for 78% of our shared expenses and owned 60% of the home equity, the settlement reflected those contributions. She kept her car, her personal belongings, and received a small cash settlement. I kept the house, my retirement accounts, and my self-respect. The final cost of the divorce was $8,500 in legal fees, less than I'd spent on romantic gestures in a single year. My attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia, who specialized in high-asset divorces, was impressed by my documentation. "Most people come to me with boxes of receipts and emotional stories," she said. "You came with a forensic analysis. It made my job much easier." 6 months later, I was sitting in my own space, a house that was now entirely mine. The mortgage payment was easily manageable on my salary alone. The guitar playing was getting better. I'd progressed to intermediate level. The gym routine was solid. I'd lost 25 pounds and gained muscle definition I hadn't seen since college. My book collection was growing, and I'd started a small investment portfolio, with the money I was no longer spending on someone who didn't appreciate it. I'd started dating again, but this time with clear boundaries and realistic expectations. The difference was remarkable. When someone appreciates genuine romantic gestures, they reciprocate. When they don't, I move on without a second thought. I'd learned to recognize the signs of someone who wants to be pursued versus someone who wants to participate in a relationship. My ex-wife texted me once, 3 months after the divorce was finalized. She said she'd been thinking about our conversation regarding romance and respect, and she finally understood what I'd meant. She said she was sorry and asked if we could talk. I texted back, "I hope you find someone who can give you what you're looking for." What I didn't say was that I hoped she'd learn to give back what she was looking for, but that wasn't my problem anymore. Her best friend, who had witnessed the anniversary dinner, humiliation, reached out to me 6 months later. She was going through her own relationship issues and wanted advice. "I watched what happened between you two," she said. "I never realized how one-sided it was until I saw you stop trying. My boyfriend does the same things for me that you did for her, and I've been taking it for granted. The lesson isn't to stop appreciating romantic gestures," I told her. "The lesson is to reciprocate them." A year later, I heard through mutual friends that my ex-wife was dating someone new. According to the reports, she was frustrated because he wasn't romantic enough and didn't make enough effort. The irony wasn't lost on me. She trained herself to expect romance without reciprocation, and now she was discovering that most men won't provide that dynamic indefinitely. Meanwhile, I was in a relationship with someone who brought me flowers just because she saw ones she thought I'd like, who planned surprise dates, who told me I looked handsome without being prompted, who contributed equally to our shared expenses, and never made me feel pathetic for showing affection. The funny thing about stopping pathetic behavior is that it doesn't just change how others see you, it changes how you see yourself. I'd spent 5 years trying to be worthy of someone who didn't think I was worth the effort. Now I knew my worth, and I wasn't willing to negotiate it downward for anyone. The man who used to beg for love was gone, and his place was someone who knew the difference between being loved and being tolerated, and that man would never settle for tolerance again. Looking back, that anniversary dinner was the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because it ended my marriage, but because it ended my willingness to accept less than I deserved. Sometimes the most pathetic thing you can do is continue trying to win over someone who's already decided you're not worth winning. I learned that romance isn't pathetic when it's mutual. Desperation is pathetic. One-sided effort is pathetic. But genuine romantic love between two people who value each other, that's the opposite of pathetic. That's what everyone deserves, and now I had it. Story 2, my wife stated, "I'm having surgery to stay childless always." I answered, "Your decision." Then I divorced her and married her best friend. The pregnancy news at Easter crushed her. Looking back, I should have seen the signs during our 3 years of marriage, but Miranda had always been good at presenting herself as the woman I thought I'd fallen in love with. I'm Jake, 32, an engineering consultant specializing in sustainable building design here in Denver. Miranda was finishing her medical residency at Presbyterian/St. Joseph, and we'd built what I thought was a solid foundation for our future together. We discussed children extensively during our engagement. She wanted 2, maybe 3 kids, and we'd agreed to start trying after she finished residency, and we'd paid off her medical school loans. Everything was planned, methodical, the way I approach most things in life. That's probably why what happened at our anniversary dinner hit me like a freight train I never saw coming. We were at Garden Grace, this upscale steakhouse downtown that Miranda loved because it made her feel important when colleagues saw her there. I'd made reservations weeks in advance, even arranged for champagne to celebrate 3 years of what I thought was marital bliss. The conversation started normally enough, her residency stress, my latest project designing an eco-friendly housing development in Boulder, our upcoming vacation to Aspen. Then somewhere between the main course and dessert, she dropped the bomb that would end our marriage. "I've been thinking about our future," she said, not making eye contact, instead studying her barely touched salmon like it contained the secrets of the universe. "I've scheduled a consultation for a hysterectomy." I set down my fork, thinking I'd misheard. What now? A hysterectomy. I want to make sure I never have children. Ever." Her voice was casual, like she was discussing changing our cable package. "I've realized that motherhood isn't for me, and I don't want to spend the next decade worrying about birth control failures or feeling pressured to reproduce just because that's what married couples do." The restaurant noise faded into background static as I processed what she just said. 3 years of marriage, 5 years of being together, countless conversations about baby names and school districts, and she was sitting there telling me she wanted surgical sterilization to ensure our carefully planned family would never exist. "When did you decide this?" I asked, proud of how steady my voice sounded. "Over the past few months, I've been seeing a therapist, working through my feelings about parenthood, and I've realized I was only saying I wanted kids because that's what you wanted to hear." She finally looked at me then, her expression defiant. "I'm not going to sacrifice my body and career for hypothetical children I don't actually want." I nodded slowly, taking a sip of the champagne that now tasted like vinegar. "Your body, your choice." She blinked, clearly expecting more of a fight. "That's it. You're not going to try to change my mind?" "Nope. If that's what you've decided, then that's what you've decided." I signaled the waiter for the check. "But you should know that this marriage was built on the premise that we were building a family together. If that's off the table, then we need to discuss what that means for us." Miranda's face changed then, confusion replacing the defensive certainty. "What do you mean?" "I mean that I married you because I thought we wanted the same things. If we don't, then maybe we're not as compatible as we thought." The check arrived, and I paid it without looking at the total. Walking to the parking garage, Miranda was unusually quiet. When we got home to our townhouse in Capitol Hill, she went straight to the bedroom while I sat in my home office, staring at my drafting table where I'd been sketching plans for converting the spare bedroom into a nursery. At 6 a.m. the next morning, while Miranda was pulling another 12-hour shift at the hospital, I called my brother Dave, who happened to be a divorce attorney here in Denver. "I need to dissolve my marriage," I told him. Like immediately. "Jesus, Jake, what happened?" "Long story. Bottom line is that Miranda has decided she never wants children, and she waited until our anniversary dinner to announce it. 3 years of marriage, 5 years together, and apparently she's been lying about wanting a family the entire time." Dave was quiet for a moment. "That's grounds for irreconcilable differences, definitely. Colorado's a no-fault state, so the process should be straightforward if you're both reasonable about it." I doubt she's going to be reasonable about anything. I was right. By 9 a.m., I'd emptied our joint investment accounts, money that came primarily from my inheritance when I sold my late father's construction business after he passed 2 years ago. I'd put that money into our shared future, thinking we were building something together. By noon, I'd loaded my truck with my engineering equipment, my tools, and everything that was solely mine. I left the divorce papers on the kitchen island next to the keys to the mountain cabin we'd bought in Breckenridge, the one we'd planned to use for family vacations and teaching our future kids to ski. The house felt hollow and strange with half the furniture gone, But I wasn't being vindictive. I only took what I'd brought into the marriage or bought with my own money. I left a note that I'd rewritten 3 times, trying to strike the right tone. Miranda, your decision to get a hysterectomy without discussing it with your husband first was absolutely your right. Your body, your choice, always. But continuing this marriage was my choice, and I'm choosing not to. The papers are self-explanatory. I'll be in touch through my attorney. When she came home that evening, exhausted from her shift, she found the house eerily quiet and half empty. I was already in my hotel room across town, having dinner with Dave and planning my next move. The divorce proceedings turned into a battlefield faster than I'd anticipated. And Miranda's transformation from the woman I'd married into someone I barely recognized was both shocking and illuminating. Her lawyer, some shark named Patricia Hendricks who specialized in bleeding men dry during divorces, immediately demanded spousal support, claiming Miranda's medical residency salary of $55,000 couldn't sustain the lifestyle my engineering consulting income had provided. I made decent money, around $180,000 annually from my sustainable building design firm, but watching Miranda's legal team try to claim she was entitled to half of everything I'd built before she even existed in my life was infuriating. The real fight came over our Denver townhouse, and especially over my custom workshop in the garage, where I'd spent countless evenings building furniture and dreaming about teaching woodworking to our future children. Miranda knew exactly what she was doing when her lawyer demanded the workshop equipment in the settlement. It wasn't about the monetary value of my tools. It was about destroying the physical space where I'd envisioned passing down skills to the next generation. She's trying to take everything that represents your dreams of fatherhood, Dave explained during one of our strategy sessions. The cabin where you planned family vacations, the workshop where you were going to teach kids to build things with their hands, even the goddamn rocking chair you'd already started making. Miranda's family rallied around her completely, hosting weekly dinners where they discussed my apparent midlife crisis and abandonment issues, like I was some kind of psychological case study rather than a man who'd been blindsided by his wife's deception. Her parents, both professors at University of Colorado, treated our divorce like an academic exercise in masculine fragility. Her younger brother Marcus, still in law school, kept posting passive-aggressive social media content about men who bail when women assert their autonomy. The irony wasn't lost on me that they were portraying Miranda as some kind of feminist hero for lying to her husband about wanting children for 5 years, then unilaterally changing the terms of our marriage without discussion. But the most unexpected development came from Harper, Miranda's best friend since college, who quietly reached out with an apologetic text message that would change everything. "Jake, I know this is probably weird hearing from me, but I wanted you to know that I think Miranda handled this terribly. I'm sorry you're going through this. Harper and I had always maintained a polite but distant relationship during my marriage. She was Miranda's friend, not mine, and I'd always felt like the third wheel when the two of them got together for their weekly coffee dates or girls' nights. She was a freelance photographer, artistic and creative in ways that complemented Miranda's scientific mind, and I'd honestly never thought much about her beyond basic social pleasantries. But her text message opened a door I hadn't expected. We met for coffee at Crema Coffee House in Rhino, neutral territory, where we were unlikely to run into Miranda or any of her hospital colleagues. Harper looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with her camera strap and avoiding eye contact as she explained her perspective on my marriage's implosion. "I told Miranda months ago that she needed to talk to you honestly about her changing feelings," Harper said, her voice barely above a whisper. She'd been seeing this therapist who was basically telling her that wanting children was internalized patriarchal pressure, and Miranda just absorbed that completely. But instead of having honest conversations with you, she decided that surprising you would be more decisive than enduring what she called lengthy negotiations. The picture Harper painted was devastating. Miranda had spent months planning this revelation, knowing it would destroy our marriage, and had chosen the most brutal possible delivery method. She actually told you she was going to blindside me like that. She said you'd either accept her decision and prove you loved her for who she was, or you'd leave and prove you only saw her as a breeding machine. She was convinced either outcome would be better than the status quo. Harper looked up at me then, and I saw genuine pain in her eyes. I tried to tell her she was being cruel, that marriages require discussion and compromise, but she said I didn't understand because I'd never been married. I learned that Miranda had been testing me in other ways too, making comments about friends who were child-free by choice, bringing up articles about women who regretted having children, gauging my reactions to see how rigid my position was. The whole thing had been an elaborate psychological experiment, and I'd been the unwitting subject. She thought you'd beg her to reconsider, Harper continued. When you just accepted her decision and left, it completely shattered her expectations. She's been calling me every night, crying about how you abandoned her instead of fighting for your marriage. Fighting for a marriage she'd already decided to end, I said. Exactly. But she won't see it that way. Miranda's always been able to rewrite history to make herself the victim. As Harper and I talked, I realized she understood the situation better than anyone else in Miranda's circle. She'd watched our marriage from the outside, seen the cracks I'd missed, and recognized the manipulation I'd been too close to identify. More importantly, she was the first person who didn't try to convince me I was overreacting or that I should have tried harder to save something that was already dead. What started as occasional coffee meetings to discuss Miranda's increasingly erratic behavior evolved into something I hadn't expected, a genuine friendship with someone who actually understood me. Harper became my unexpected confidant as we met at different coffee shops around Denver, initially bonding over our mutual concern about Miranda's mental state, but gradually discovering we had far more in common than I'd ever realized. She was passionate about hiking Colorado's 14 Ers, something Miranda had always dismissed as pointless suffering, and Harper's eyes lit up when I mentioned my goal of completing all 58 peaks before I turned 40. We discovered shared interests in vintage film photography. Harper still shot with her grandfather's old Leica and sustainable architecture, which fascinated her from an artistic perspective. I always felt like an outsider when I was around you and Miranda, Harper admitted during one of our walks through Washington Park. She'd talk about your relationship like she was performing in a play, you know. Like she was acting the part of the devoted wife who wanted the white picket fence and babies, but it never felt genuine. Her observation hit me hard because it explained so much about my marriage that I'd rationalized away. Miranda's enthusiasm for house hunting had felt forced. Her interest in baby names had seemed academic rather than emotional. Even her excitement about the mountain cabin had been more about posting Instagram photos than actually creating family memories. You sensed that she was performing, I asked, from the beginning. Miranda's always been competitive about having the most impressive life, and you represented the stable, successful future she thought she wanted. But I could tell she was trying to convince herself as much as everyone else. Harper paused, kicking at fallen leaves on the path. She used to complain privately about feeling trapped by expectations, but then she'd post these perfect couple photos with captions about being blessed and finding her soulmate. Our conversations began shifting from analyzing Miranda to discovering who we were as individuals. Harper told me about her struggles building a freelance photography business, her dream of shooting for National Geographic, her complicated relationship with her artistic family, who thought she should have gone to art school instead of teaching herself through trial and error. I found myself sharing things I'd never told Miranda, my guilt about selling my father's construction business instead of carrying on his legacy, my fear that I was too focused on planning to actually live in the moment, my growing sense that I'd been sleepwalking through my own life. Miranda used to say you were obsessed with the future, Harper said during a hike up Mount Sinades. But I think you were just trying to build something meaningful with someone who didn't actually want to build anything. When Miranda discovered our friendship through Harper's Instagram stories, innocent photos of hiking trails and coffee shops that happened to include me in the background, she launched a calculated campaign to turn our mutual friends against both of us. Suddenly, I was hearing from people I'd known for years, asking pointed questions about whether I was rebounding with Miranda's best friend and whether Harper had been waiting in the wings during my marriage. Miranda's version of events, spread strategically through her network of medical colleagues and college friends, painted me as a man who'd abandoned his wife during her time of personal growth, then immediately started an affair with her closest friend. Harper bore the brunt of Miranda's fury, receiving late-night calls where Miranda accused her of being a manipulative homewrecker who'd been plotting to steal her husband from the beginning. "She's telling people I gave you advice about the divorce because I wanted you for myself," Harper told me, her voice shaking with anger and hurt. "Like I somehow orchestrated your entire marriage falling apart so I could swoop in afterward. The accusations were absurd, but they worked on some people." Miranda's college sorority sisters, her medical school classmates, even some of our mutual friends from the neighborhood began treating both Harper and me like pariahs. The social consequences were swift and brutal. Dinner invitations dried up, group texts went silent, and longtime friendships evaporated under the pressure of Miranda's narrative about betrayal and manipulation. But instead of driving us apart, Miranda's campaign brought Harper and me closer together. We found ourselves relying on each other for support as our social circle imploded, sharing the unique experience of being falsely accused by someone we'd both cared about. Harper's loyalty during this period impressed me more than any grand romantic gesture could have. She could have distanced herself from me to preserve her friendship with Miranda, but instead she stood her ground and defended both of us against accusations she knew were lies. "I've known Miranda for 12 years, Harper said during one particularly difficult evening, after Miranda had convinced Harper's photography mentor to drop her from an upcoming exhibition. "But I've never seen her be deliberately cruel like this. It's like she's become someone else entirely." What Harper didn't know yet was that Miranda's behavior was about to get much worse, and our friendship was about to evolve into something that would give Miranda's accusations a twisted kind of truth, though nothing like the manipulative conspiracy she'd imagined. Our relationship evolved naturally during weekend camping trips to Rocky Mountain National Park, where we found solace away from Miranda's constant social media surveillance and the harassment campaign she was waging against both of us. Harper knew all the hidden gems, secluded campsites near alpine lakes where cell service was non-existent, and we could actually breathe without wondering who might be watching or reporting back to Miranda. Those trips became my salvation during the ugliest parts of the divorce proceedings, when Miranda's lawyer was demanding forensic accounting of every penny I'd earned during our marriage, and Miranda herself was showing up at my job sites, causing scenes that were affecting my professional reputation. She came to the Boulder housing development yesterday. I told Harper during a hike to Emerald Lake, made this whole dramatic speech to my crew about how I'd abandoned her in her time of need, and how men like me destroy women who try to assert their independence. Harper stopped walking, her face flushed with anger. She's completely lost it. This has gone way beyond hurt feelings into something genuinely unhinged. Those mountain conversations revealed how perfectly aligned Harper and I were on everything that mattered. We both wanted children, both valued building something lasting rather than just accumulating experiences. Both believed in the kind of partnership where two people made each other stronger rather than competing for dominance. Harper talked about her childhood dreams of having a big family, how she'd always imagined teaching her kids to see the world through a camera lens, how she wanted to create the kind of stable, loving home she'd never quite had growing up with artistic parents who prioritized their careers over family dinners and bedtime stories. Miranda used to make fun of how traditional my dreams were, Harper admitted, as we sat by a campfire near Bear Lake. She said I was wasting my potential by wanting to be someone's wife and mother instead of building an empire. I realized that Harper had been suffering through her own version of what I'd experienced with Miranda, being made to feel small for wanting conventional happiness, being told that commitment and family were somehow lesser goals than individual achievement and endless self-optimization. The night everything changed between us was during a 3-day backpacking trip in the Indian Peaks wilderness, when a sudden thunderstorm forced us to shelter together in Harper's small tent. We'd been friends for months by then, but something about the intimacy of that moment, listening to rain on the tent walls, sharing body heat, talking in whispers so we wouldn't wake imaginary neighbors, shifted the dynamic between us irreversibly. "I need to tell you something," Harper said in the darkness. "I think I'm falling in love with you." I'd been fighting the same feelings for weeks, trying to convince myself that my growing attraction to Harper was just rebound emotions or gratitude for her support during the divorce. But hearing her voice, those words made me realize I'd been lying to myself about what was happening between us. "I love you too," I said, and kissing her felt like the most natural thing in the world. We decided to keep our relationship secret until the divorce was finalized, knowing that Miranda would use any evidence of romance between us to complicate the legal proceedings and validate her narrative about our supposed affair. But more than that, we wanted to protect something precious and new from the toxicity Miranda was spreading through our lives. We were both exhausted from being public figures in her revenge fantasy. Keeping our love private felt like reclaiming some small measure of peace. 6 months later, when my divorce was finally settled in Harper, and I had been quietly dating without any of the drama or performance that had characterized my marriage, I proposed during a sunrise hike to Mount Elbert, Colorado's highest peak. She said yes before I'd even finished asking the question, and we eloped the following week in a small ceremony at Garden of the Gods with only Harper's photographer colleague Maria as our witness. The ceremony was everything my first wedding hadn't been. Intimate, genuine, focused on promises we actually intended to keep rather than public declarations designed to impress other people. Harper wore a simple white dress she'd bought at a vintage shop in Boulder. I wore the suit I'd gotten married in the first time but had never felt comfortable wearing, and we exchanged vows we'd written ourselves about building a life together based on honesty and shared dreams rather than performance and expectation. When Harper moved into my new condo in Boulder, I'd sold the Denver townhouse to Miranda as part of the settlement. We converted the spare bedroom into a combined photography studio and woodworking space, symbolically merging our creative lives in ways I'd never been able to do with Miranda. Harper loved watching me work with my hands, was genuinely interested in my sustainable building projects, and began incorporating architectural elements into her photography that made both our work stronger. We started discussing our own family timeline immediately, with Harper expressing genuine excitement about having children and me finally feeling heard and understood by a partner who shared my values about legacy and building something meaningful for the next generation. "I want to document everything," Harper said, her hand on her still flat stomach just 2 months after our wedding. "Our pregnancy, the birth, watching them grow up. I want to create this visual history of our family that they'll have forever." I was building a crib in our combined workshop, using techniques my father had taught me and tools that Miranda had tried to take in when Harper told me she was pregnant with twins. Harper's grandmother hosted Easter brunch at her sprawling Victorian house in Colorado Springs every year, and this gathering would become the setting for the most explosive confrontation I'd ever witnessed. Eleanor Chen was 83 years old, a retired family court judge who'd built her reputation on cutting through bullshit and protecting children from destructive adults, and she'd taken an immediate liking to me when Harper first brought me to meet the family. Harper had spent weeks preparing a special photo album for the announcement, professional quality images documenting our elopement at Garden of the Gods, followed by artistic shots of our combined workshop and our Boulder condo, culminating in the ultrasound photographs that revealed we were expecting twins. She designed it like a visual story, each page building toward the revelation that would change our lives forever. What we hadn't anticipated was that Miranda would be there. Harper had maintained a fragile friendship with a few people from her college circle, including her roommate Jessica, who'd invited Miranda as her +1 without knowing about the ongoing drama between us. Jessica had been studying abroad during most of the divorce proceedings and was genuinely oblivious to the warfare Miranda had been waging against Harper and me through social media and mutual friends. I brought Miranda because she seemed so lonely, Jessica whispered to Harper when they arrived. She's been having a really hard time since the divorce, and I thought being around family friends might cheer her up. Miranda looked terrible. She'd lost significant weight, her hair was lank and unwashed, and she had the hollow-eyed appearance of someone who hadn't been sleeping well. She'd clearly been struggling since our divorce finalized, and part of me felt genuine sympathy for her obvious pain. But that sympathy evaporated the moment she saw me sitting next to Harper at the dining table, wearing a wedding ring she hadn't noticed yet. The Easter brunch proceeded normally for the first hour, with Alina regaling the extended family with stories from her decades on the family court bench and Harper's teenage cousins, showing off their latest TikTok videos. Harper and I were waiting for the perfect moment to make our announcement when Alina stood up and clinked her wine glass, commanding attention from the assembled crowd of about 20 people. "Harper has something special to share with all of us," Alina announced, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to controlling courtrooms. "But first, I want to say how proud I am of the woman she's become and how happy I am that she's found someone who appreciates her remarkable heart." Harper stood up, her hands slightly shaking as she held the custom photo album she'd spent weeks perfecting. "Jake and I wanted to share some news with everyone," she began, opening to the first page showing our elopement ceremony. "We got married 3 months ago in a small ceremony," and she turned to the ultrasound pages, her voice growing stronger with excitement. "We're expecting twins this fall." The room erupted in congratulations and excitement, with family members rushing to examine the photographs and offer hugs. Alina was crying happy tears, Harper's cousins were shrieking with excitement about becoming aunties, and even Jessica was clapping with genuine joy despite her confusion about the timeline. But Miranda was sitting frozen in her chair, staring at the ultrasound images like they were evidence of some cosmic betrayal. I watched the exact moment when the full magnitude of what she was seeing hit her, not just that Harper and I were married, but that we were building the family she'd rejected, creating the future she'd destroyed, living the life she'd convinced herself she didn't want until she realized someone else was going to have it instead. "You planned this," Miranda said, her voice cutting through the celebration like a knife. "You planned all of this from the beginning." The room went silent as everyone turned to look at her. Harper closed the photo album, her face pale but determined. "Miranda, I know this is probably difficult to hear, but Jake and I didn't even start dating until after his divorce was finalized." "Bullshit." Miranda stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "You were feeding him information about me, turning him against me, manipulating the whole situation so you could swoop in and steal my husband the second I showed any independence." Alina's expression had shifted from confusion to the steely look she'd perfected during 40 years of dealing with unstable people in family court. "Young lady, you need to lower your voice and control yourself." "Control myself." Miranda's voice was rising to a shout. "This woman destroyed my marriage. She convinced Jake to leave me the second I made one decision about my own body, and now she's flaunting my life like some kind of trophy." Harper stood up, trying to maintain dignity in the face of Miranda's escalating hysteria. "Miranda, you told Jake you were getting a hysterectomy to ensure you never had children. You ended your own marriage. Because you told me he'd never accept it, you said he was too controlling, too traditional, that he'd leave me if I didn't want kids right away." Miranda was screaming now, tears and mascara streaming down her face. "You manipulated me into sabotaging my own relationship." The accusation was so insane, so detached from reality, that I finally spoke up. "Miranda, Harper never told you to blindside me with a hysterectomy announcement. That was your choice, your strategy, your decision to destroy our marriage without discussion. She stole my entire future." Miranda lunged across the table, reaching for the photo album like she could destroy the evidence of our happiness. Harper pulled it away just in time, but Miranda managed to grab several loose photographs, tearing them in half before Alina's grandson Marcus could restrain her. "This should be my life. These should be my babies." She planned this for years, waiting for me to make one mistake so she could take everything I worked for. The scene devolved into chaos as multiple family members tried to calm Miranda down while she continued screaming about Harper's supposed long-term manipulation and my betrayal. Eleanor called the police when Miranda tried to physically attack Harper, requiring 3 adults to hold her back while she shrieked accusations about stolen futures and planned betrayals. The last thing Miranda screamed as Jessica dragged her out of the house was, "I never wanted that hysterectomy. It was all a test. You were supposed to fight for me." And suddenly, everything made sense. Harper's family, initially shocked by our secret marriage and pregnancy announcement, rallied around us completely after witnessing Miranda's unhinged behavior and learning the full timeline of events from Eleanor's pointed questioning. Eleanor, drawing on 4 decades of family court experience, had immediately recognized the signs of someone rewriting history to avoid accountability for their own destructive choices. "That young woman is what we used to call a chaos agent," Eleanor told the assembled family after Miranda's dramatic exit. "She creates crisis and conflict, then plays the victim when people respond rationally to her manipulation. I've seen it 1,000 times in custody cases." The contrast between families was stark and telling. While Harper's relatives were processing the revelation that Miranda's hysterectomy announcement had been an elaborate test designed to manipulate me into proving my devotion, Miranda's own family was doubling down on their support for her increasingly erratic behavior. Her parents, both psychology professors at UC Boulder, had apparently been enabling Miranda's victim narrative by providing academic justification for her actions, calling my immediate departure a form of emotional abandonment, and framing Harper's friendship with me as predatory behavior typical of women who target vulnerable men during relationship transitions. The difference in family dynamics became even more apparent when Miranda's behavior escalated beyond social media harassment into actual stalking. She began showing up at my construction sites, sometimes bringing her mother along for moral support, creating scenes that were affecting my professional reputation and making my crew uncomfortable. My project foreman, a 60-year-old guy named Carlos who'd worked with my father for 20 years, finally had to threaten to call security when Miranda started approaching my clients with stories about how I'd emotionally abused her during our marriage. "Boss, that woman is gonna cost you contracts if she keeps this up," Carlos warned me after Miranda had cornered Mrs. Patterson, the client for our sustainable housing development, with a 40-minute monologue about my supposed character defects. "Mrs. Patterson asked me if you were safe to have around her grandchildren." Meanwhile, Miranda's campaign against Harper became even more vicious and personal. She somehow gained access to Harper's photography equipment during a wedding shoot at the Denver Botanic Gardens and vandalized thousands of dollars worth of camera gear with what appeared to be car keys. Harper lost the entire wedding contract when the bride's photographs were ruined, and the resulting lawsuit from the wedding party threatened to destroy Harper's business entirely. "She's not just trying to hurt us emotionally anymore," Harper said, surveying the damage to her cameras with tears in her eyes. "She's trying to destroy our livelihoods." Eleanor's response to Miranda's escalation was swift and decisive. Using her connections in the legal community, she helped Harper file restraining orders and contacted the hospital administration about Miranda's increasingly unstable behavior affecting her medical residency performance. "I've written family court recommendations that kept children away from less destructive parents than this," Eleanor told us during a family dinner. "Miranda needs professional help, but more importantly, you two need legal protection from someone who's clearly lost touch with reality." The professional consequences for Miranda began accumulating rapidly. Her residency supervisor, Dr. Richard Hayes, called a formal meeting after receiving multiple complaints about Miranda's personal drama spilling into the hospital environment. She'd been using hospital computers to monitor Harper's social media during her shifts, had been discussing her personal grievances with patients during medical consultations, and had missed several important procedures because she was too distracted by her vendetta against us to focus on her medical responsibilities. Harper's photography business, ironically, began flourishing in the aftermath of Miranda's vandalism incident when the story spread through Denver's wedding industry. Vendors and other photographers rallied around Harper, referring clients specifically because they admired how she'd handled the crisis with grace and professionalism. The wedding party whose photos Miranda had ruined ended up hiring Harper for their first anniversary shoot after seeing how devastated she was about the destroyed memories, and their social media posts about Harper's integrity generated more referrals than any advertising campaign could have achieved. It's like Miranda's attempts to destroy us are backfiring spectacularly, Harper observed as we reviewed her booking calendar, which was fuller than it had ever been. Every time she tries to hurt us, we end up stronger. Eleanor's influence in the community also proved invaluable when Miranda's parents attempted to interfere with our lives through their academic connections. Dr. Susan Miranda, Miranda's mother and a prominent child psychology professor, had been spreading rumors through the university network about my abandonment patterns and Harper's manipulative tendencies, trying to damage both our professional reputations through academic gossip. But Eleanor's 40-year reputation for integrity and her extensive network of legal and academic contacts shut down those rumors quickly. I made some phone calls. Eleanor told us with the satisfied smile of someone who just outmaneuvered an opponent. Dr. Miranda has been politely reminded that spreading unsubstantiated claims about private citizens could constitute defamation, especially when those citizens are expecting their first children and trying to build stable family lives. The final turning point came when Miranda's own brother Marcus, the law student who'd been posting passive-aggressive social media content about my supposed character flaws, witnessed one of Miranda's stalking incidents at my Boulder construction site and realized how far his sister had deteriorated from the person he'd grown up with. "Jake, I owe you an apology," Marcus said when he called me directly. "I thought Miranda was just hurt and needed family support, but what I saw today, that wasn't my sister anymore. That was someone who needs serious mental health intervention." With her own family finally beginning to recognize the extent of Miranda's problems and professional consequences mounting from her inability to maintain appropriate boundaries, the harassment campaign against Harper and me began to lose steam. But Miranda herself was far from finished, and the final revelation about her hysterectomy deception would prove to be the most devastating twist yet. Harper and I spent the summer preparing our nursery using the custom woodworking tools I'd originally planned to pass down to children with Miranda, creating a rocking chair and matching cribs that represented our fresh start together, and our commitment to building something lasting for the next generation. Every evening after work, I'd retreat to our combined workshop while Harper edited photographs at her computer nearby, both of us working on our respective crafts in comfortable silence that felt like the partnership I'd always imagined marriage should be. The rocking chair was made from reclaimed wood salvaged from my father's old construction projects, each piece carrying memories of the man who taught me that building something with your hands was a form of love made tangible. Harper documented the entire process with her camera, creating a visual record of how we were literally and figuratively constructing our family's future from the foundation up. "These babies are going to know exactly how much they were wanted," Harper said, her hand resting on her growing belly as she photographed me sanding the crib rails. "They'll see these pictures someday and understand that we built their first furniture with our own hands, that every detail was planned with love." Miranda's attempts to reconcile and reclaim what she now called her rightful place in my life failed spectacularly when she finally understood that Harper was everything she'd only pretended to be. While Miranda had performed the role of supportive wife who shared my dreams of family and legacy, Harper genuinely embraced those values as her own. Miranda had treated my woodworking hobby as a quaint distraction from more important pursuits, but Harper saw it as an extension of my character and encouraged me to teach neighborhood children basic carpentry skills in our garage workshop. The contrast became painfully obvious during Miranda's final, desperate attempt to win me back. She showed up at our Boulder condo on a Tuesday evening in September. 8 months pregnant Harper was editing photos on the couch, while I put finishing touches on the second crib. Miranda looked healthier than she had at Easter. She'd clearly been working with a therapist and had gained back some of the weight she'd lost during her breakdown. But there was still something hollow about her appearance, like she was going through the motions of recovery without actually healing. "Jake, I need to tell you the truth about everything," she said when I answered the door, refusing Harper's polite offer to give us privacy. "The hysterectomy was never real. I never scheduled any surgery. It was all a test to see how much you really loved me, how hard you'd fight to keep our marriage together." Harper looked up from her laptop, her expression shifting from polite concern to dawning understanding. I felt something cold settle in my stomach as the implications became clear. "A test," I said slowly. "You destroyed our marriage with a fake medical procedure to test my devotion. I know it sounds crazy now, but my therapist at the time said that couples need to challenge each other, that comfortable relationships become stagnant. She suggested I create a scenario that would force you to prove your commitment beyond just going through the motions of planning our future." Miranda's voice was gaining strength as she spoke, like she was convincing herself as much as me. "I thought you'd fight for us, prove that you loved me enough to work through anything. Instead, you just left." Harper stood up carefully, her pregnancy making quick movements difficult, and walked over to stand beside me. "Miranda, you lied to your husband about never wanting children, then blamed him for believing you. That's not testing commitment, that's emotional abuse. You don't understand," Miranda snapped, her composure cracking. "Jake and I had something real, something you could never compete with honestly. You had to wait for me to make one mistake, one moment of weakness, so you could swoop in and steal my life." I looked at this woman I'd once planned to spend forever with, seeing clearly for the first time how fundamentally different we were. "Miranda, you didn't make one mistake. You spent months planning to deceive me in the cruelest way possible, then blamed me for responding exactly how any rational person would. That's not weakness, that's who you are." The visit ended with Miranda crying on our front porch, begging me to remember what we'd once meant to each other, promising she'd changed and learned from her mistakes. But Harper and I both understood that Miranda's version of change meant finding better ways to manipulate situations to her advantage, not actually developing empathy or integrity. 6 weeks later, Harper gave birth to healthy twins, Emma and Michael, and my workshop finally became the place I'd always dreamed it would be. As the babies grew into toddlers, our garage filled with neighborhood children every Saturday morning, as I taught basic woodworking skills to anyone interested in learning. Emma and Michael would toddle around the workspace in tiny safety goggles, handing me sandpaper and soaking up the atmosphere of creation and learning that I'd always envisioned sharing with my children. Harper documented everything with her camera, first steps taken between workbenches, tiny hands learning to hold junior hammers, the proud expressions when kids completed their first birdhouse or pencil holder. Her photography business evolved to specialize in family documentation, creating visual legacies for other parents who understood the importance of preserving these fleeting moments when children still believe their parents can build anything. Miranda eventually moved to California for a fresh start, accepting a residency position at UCSF, where nobody knew about her breakdown or the chaos she'd created in Denver. Through mutual friends, I heard she'd married a fellow doctor within 2 years, someone wealthy enough to support the lifestyle she'd always craved but too busy with his own career to notice her manipulative tendencies until it was too late. From our kitchen window, I could sometimes see her old apartment building across town, now occupied by a young couple with a baby stroller parked outside. Harper would catch me looking occasionally and remind me that curiosity about someone's current situation wasn't the same as missing them or regretting the choices that led us to our current happiness. "She gave you the greatest gift imaginable," Harper said one evening as we watched Emma and Michael help me organize tools in the workshop. "She showed you exactly who she was before you wasted more years trying to build a future with someone who didn't actually want to build anything at all. Story 3 flights are $1,200 each," my mom said. If you cannot afford it, stay behind. I nodded, then got an alert. My credit card had been used for 4 business class tickets, not mine. I opened my app, hit dispute all, locked the account. At check-in, my sister texted, "Why is nothing paid for?" I texted back, "What you said." I stayed behind, then booked my own getaway. The next day, my dad showed up at my apartment. I did not. "Flights are $1,200 each," my mom said. "If you cannot afford it, stay behind." I didn't argue, I just nodded, even smiled like it didn't sting. Like it wasn't the 6th time in 2 years my own family had made it clear I didn't belong unless I paid for the privilege. She said it so casually over speakerphone while I was still in my scrubs, sweating after a 12-hour shift at the hospital. I had just finished working back-to-back night shifts to cover the rent and chip away at my student loans. They were all going to Maui. My mom, my dad, my sister Kayla, her husband Derek. A week-long family vacation. Business class, of course. "You know, we deserve this," she added. "It's been a rough year for everyone. Everyone." As if I wasn't part of that everyone. As if I hadn't loaned Kayla $2,500 last April when Derek lost his sales job, or covered Dad's medical deductible when his blood pressure spiked and he refused to go to urgent care because of cost. I told her it was fine, that I'd stay behind, and then I went back to cleaning up vomit from a drunk patient who tried to punch me for suggesting he lay down. But later that night, I got a ping on my phone. An alert from my credit card app for business class tickets to allow $200 each. My card, not my name. I opened the app. Passenger names: Caleb B. Derek B. Sandra M. Mom. William M. Dad. No. Alex M. No me. I stared at the screen for a full minute. My fingers went cold, my heart pounding. They had used my credit card again, without asking, without telling me. Just assumed I'd cover it like I always did. I didn't even get a window seat out of it. I tapped dispute all, then I locked the account. An hour later, I was brushing my teeth when my phone buzzed again. A text from Kayla. "Why is nothing paid for? We're at check-in." I wiped the toothpaste from my mouth, looked at the message, took a deep breath. Then I typed back, "What you said, I stayed behind," and I did. I stayed behind, but not in the way they expected. I booked my own getaway, somewhere warmer, quieter, no family, no obligations, no guilt. The next morning, my phone buzzed again. A call from Dad. I didn't answer. That afternoon, he showed up at my apartment, knocked like he owned the place. I didn't open the door. It didn't start with the tickets. That was just the cherry on top of a mountain made of broken boundaries and overdraft fees. It started when I was 22 and Kayla borrowed my credit card to buy a dress for her engagement party. A $600 temporary emergency, because you work in healthcare and don't even dress up, so it's not like you'll notice. She promised to pay me back by the end of the month. She never did. Then it was Dad asking me to co-sign a loan so they could renovate their kitchen. "It's not even for us," he said. "It's for resale value. One day you'll inherit it." Spoiler, the house was refinanced twice, and they used the money to pay off Derek's second failed business. I was working 50-plus-hour weeks at the time, barely keeping my head above water, and somehow I was still the family ATM. The dependable one. The nurse with a steady job. The unmarried one with no kids. The one who should pitch in because family supports each other. But it was never mutual. When I got pneumonia last winter from working through flu season and asked Mom to bring me soup, she said, "I can't, sweetheart. I promised Kayla I'd watch the kids while she gets her nails done, you understand." I always understood. When Derek crashed my car, the car I let him borrow while his was in the shop, my insurance premium doubled. He didn't even say sorry, just shrugged and said, "That's what insurance is for, right?" They drained me slowly, drip by drip, until I didn't even feel it anymore, like boiling a frog. I was the frog. Until the week before the Hawaii trip, that was the real fuse. I was finishing a night shift when Kayla texted, "Can you move your payday up? Mom wants to book hotels and we're short." "What payday?" I sent back. "Short for what?" She replied with a gif of hula dancers and the words "family trip" with a desert island, hibiscus, and dancing woman emoji. I called Mom. "Kayla said you need help with hotels," I asked, trying to stay neutral. "Oh, sweetie, don't worry about that," she chirped. "Everything's already booked. We just needed a bit of a cushion to upgrade to business class. You know how bad Derek's knees are." "Wait, you're asking me to cover the upgrade for a trip I'm not even on?" Silence. Then the tone changed. "Look, Abigail, if you wanted to come, you could have said something, but the flights are $10,200 each. If you can't afford that, then maybe it's best you sit this one out. No hard feelings. She said it like I was a burden, like my very existence was an inconvenience to their luxury itinerary. I didn't argue, just hung up. Quiet, calm, numb. Then came the notification. My card used for 4 business class tickets. That's when the numbness broke. All the sacrifices, all the times I canceled vacations, skipped dinners, worked doubles for what? So they could live it up while I rationed my meds and ate instant ramen 3 nights a week. That night, I sat at my desk, staring at a spreadsheet of my finances. I had $327 in checking, $14,200 in student loans. My car was 6 years old with 119,000 miles on it. I hadn't been on a vacation since college. Meanwhile, Derek was sipping first-class champagne with my name on the receipt, and Kayla had the audacity to text me from the check-in line with, "Why is nothing paid for?" The math slipped. That's who they were, who they'd always been. I wasn't family, I was funding. I responded simply, "What you said, I stayed behind." Then I did something I never thought I'd do. I opened a travel site and booked my own trip. Nowhere fancy, but it was mine, all mine. No obligations, no guilt. The next day, Dad showed up at my door like a scene from a Netflix thriller. Still in his Hawaiian shirt, standing outside my apartment with a look that flickered between confusion, anger, and entitlement. He knocked. I didn't move. He knocked again, louder this time. "Abigail, open the door, we need to talk." I didn't. He stayed there for 7 minutes. I timed it, then he left. That evening, I got a voicemail from Mom. "You really hurt your father today. He flew back early to speak to you after everything we've done for you, done for me." I saved the message, not for memories, for evidence. I was done gaslighting myself. The next day, Kayla tried calling 5 times, then sent this gem. "Grow up, you can't punish the whole family over one misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. They used me, robbed me, mocked me. And now that I said no, I was the bad guy. But I wasn't mad anymore, I was done. They thought silence meant surrender, that if they knocked hard enough, long enough, I'd cave just like always. But I had changed." Dad came back again the next day, this time with Mom. Same spot, same condo hallway, same tired manipulation on their faces. I didn't open the door. That night the texts started flooding in from Kayla. "You are being completely unfair. We needed that upgrade. Derek's knees swell when he flies economy. Do you realize what you've done? We couldn't even check in, had to downgrade and pay out of pocket. Do you know how embarrassing that was?" Family is supposed to be there for each other. Family, that word again. I typed, deleted, retyped. Then I sent one message. "You mean like when I paid your rent for 8 months and you forgot to pay me back?" No reply. Next came a barrage of calls from Mom, all ignored. Then a text from Dad. "You need to grow up and stop playing victim." We had no choice. We didn't know the card would decline. "You were supposed to help, you always do." I stared at that last line for a long time. "You were supposed to help," like I was a family employee whose absence constituted workplace misconduct. I didn't reply, but I wasn't done, because they thought this was just a phase, a tantrum, that I'd get over it like I always did. But this time was different. This time I was angry, not just emotionally hurt, logistically, financially, physically exhausted from years of propping up a system where I was the silent donor. So I did what they never expected. I sat down and wrote an invoice. $600 dress for Kayla's engagement, never repaid. $2,500 loan to Kayla and Derek during his unemployment. $800 Dad's MRI deductible out of pocket. $420 groceries. Mom forgot to Venmo back. $1,200 X4 for business class tickets to Hawaii charged without consent. $150 interest and fees on late credit payment caused by above. And a total outstanding balance of $7,070. Then I emailed it to the family group chat. Reimbursement request for unauthorized charges and past support body. Per your belief that families should be there for each other, please see the attached breakdown of financial support I have extended over the past 24 months. As of July 1st, I will no longer be subsidizing family expenses. Full repayment expected within 30 business days. After that, I'll be submitting formal reports to my credit provider regarding unauthorized use of my financial credentials. No further financial interaction will be permitted moving forward. The group chat exploded. "Kayla, are you serious? What kind of person sends an invoice to their own family?" "Mom, this is hurtful and unnecessary, Abigail. You're making things worse. Dad, we raised you better than this." That line, that was the final spark. Because the truth was they didn't raise me. I raised myself between extra shifts, unpaid debts, and being the default safety net for everyone else's irresponsibility. I replied with the facts. You didn't raise me. I was overwhelmed by the imbalance in our relationship and I let you, but not anymore. Then I blocked Kayla. I left Dad and Mom unblocked out of sheer curiosity for how deep the delusion could go. Turns out very deep. The next night they showed up in person again. I saw them through the peephole. Dad looked stiff. Mom clutched some papers, probably receipts and excuses. I opened the door. "You need to talk to us, Mom," said voice trembling. "No, I really don't," I replied calmly. Dad stepped forward. "This stunt, freezing the credit, the invoice, it's spiteful, Abigail. We're your family and you used my name and card to buy flights." I snapped. "That's not family. That was a serious breach of trust. We didn't think it would be an issue," Mom cried. "You always help." "Because you trained me to," I cut in. "Since I was 22, you've treated me like a walking debit card. I helped because I was taught that saying no meant I was a bad daughter, but I'm done being the good daughter." "Don't talk to your mother like that," Dad growled. "No, don't talk to me like I owe you something," I shot back. "I worked double shifts while Kayla and Derek used my money to sit mimosas at Lax. I helped pay your hospital bills while you called me selfish behind my back." He stepped forward. "You think this makes you strong, turning your back on family?" "No," I said, "but it makes me free." I closed the door in their faces, not slammed, just firm, deliberate with finality. They didn't knock again. Later that night, I got a voicemail from Mom, a quiet, defeated voice. "I don't know who you are anymore." And for the first time in my life, I smiled at those words. Because I wasn't the person they used to walk all over. After I closed the door in my father's face, the silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was surgical, precise, final. No more banging on the door. No more guilt-laced voicemails. Just a vacuum where their control used to live. For 2 days, nothing. Not a word from any of them. I half expected the cold shoulder to last forever. Then came the panic. It started with an email from my bank. Someone had attempted to use my old, frozen credit card again to rent a car in Maui. Derek, of course. I called the fraud department. They confirmed the attempted charge matched his ID info. "Would you like to press charges?" they asked. I didn't, not yet. But I had them document everything and emailed the report to myself. A subject line typed in evidence in case they escalate. Later that night, I received a text from an unknown number. "We're stranded. Are you seriously going to leave your family like this after all we've done for you?" Kayla. I stared at it for a long time. What had they done for me, really, besides take? I didn't reply, just screenshotted it and filed it in the new folder I'd made. Family patterns I won't repeat. A few days passed. Then something truly bizarre happened. I got a message on Facebook from Marissa. Yes, that Marissa, Derek's ex-wife. We hadn't spoken in years. Last I heard, she moved across the country after their divorce and started over. She was always too smart for him. A lawyer with bite, ambition, and an allergy to nonsense. Her message was simple. "Hey Abigail, sorry to pop in like this, but you might want to talk." I replied, "Is this about Derek?" She sent a thumbs up, then a file, a PDF. I hesitated for a second, then opened it. Inside, screenshots, bank transfers, a paper trail. Apparently, Derek had been rerouting funds from a joint family account Mom and Dad gave him access to for emergencies. He was gambling again. Crypto this time. High risk, low IQ. It got worse. In the screenshots, there were emails. One from Mom begging Marissa not to report anything. Another from Dad, "We'll fix this." Abigail doesn't need to know. They knew. They all knew. They hid it from me because they were scared I'd cut them off before I actually did. The plane tickets were just the tip of the iceberg. They had been bleeding me dry to cover up Derek's financial mess. I called Marissa immediately. She picked up on the second ring. "I wasn't sure you'd even want to talk," she said, "but I couldn't keep watching from the sidelines. I know how they used to treat you." I asked why she was sending this now. She paused, then said, "Because you're finally doing what I should have done years ago, walking away. And I thought you deserved to know the truth." That night, I printed every page, every transfer, every shady message. I stapled them together and walked them to my desk. And for the first time in years, I slept with the window open, breeze in my room, no anxiety buzzing in my chest. The next morning, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It was Dad. His voice was low, not angry but strained. "Abigail, I don't know what to say. Your mother is sick with stress. Kayla's not eating. Derek, he's not doing well. We made mistakes, sure, but you've made your point. I'm asking man to woman, can we please talk?" I typed one sentence and texted it back. "You're not entitled to grace you never earned." That week, I sent the invoice again, this time with Marissa's files attached as addendum. Supplemental evidence. I copied Aunt Linda. And just for fun, I forwarded a redacted version to Dad's employer's HR department anonymously. A few days later, I got an alert. Dad was no longer listed on the company site. I didn't celebrate, I wasn't angry, just detached. Meanwhile, my life, it bloomed. I enrolled in therapy, real in-person sessions. I took long walks, bought a bike, cooked something new every weekend. Started seeing a man I met at the hospital cafeteria. David, soft-spoken, curious, no idea who my family was. And I told him about them, about me, about the version of myself I was finally building without them. One afternoon, David and I sat on my couch reviewing a local hiking trail. He pointed to one and smiled. "Want to go next weekend?" And for the first time in years, I didn't have to check my bank account. I just said yes. Weeks later, I got one last letter, handwritten, no return address. I recognized the handwriting. "Kayla, 5 pages of manipulation masquerading as apology. We all make mistakes. You took it too far. Mom cries every day. You've turned your back on blood." At the end, she wrote, "We're family. Nothing changes that." And I realized she was right. We are family. That's what makes this even worse, because it wasn't strangers who stole from me. It was the people who knew me best and still did it anyway. I folded the letter, placed it on top of the Marissa file, and locked them both in a drawer. The night before my birthday, I got a card in the mail. Simple, no return address. Just 3 words written inside. "And I see you." It was from Marissa. And in that moment I smiled because someone finally did. It's been 6 months since I slammed the door on my past. 6 months since I stopped apologizing for saying no. 6 months since I finally looked at myself in the mirror and didn't see a walking wallet, but a woman, whole and untethered. I used to think closure meant they'd come to me, heads bowed, tears in their eyes, offering apologies and redemption. But closure wasn't their job, it was mine. 3 weeks ago, I ran into my mother, total accident. I was grabbing my morning espresso at a quiet downtown cafe, still half asleep, earbuds in, hoodie up. Then her voice, "Abigail." I looked up and there she was, smaller than I remembered. Not just in stature, in presence, like time had shrunk her. She smiled like nothing ever happened, like we didn't go to war with silence and invoices. "Can we sit?" We sat. She talked first, rambling, no real apologies, just memory revision. We were just trying to hold things together. "We didn't realize how much you were carrying. If we could go back, maybe we'd do some things differently." No ownership, no mention of the fraud, no word about Derek trying to use my credit again, no accountability for Kayla's venom. Just an emotional dress rehearsal where I was supposed to play the forgiving daughter. But I was done with that role. Then came the inevitable. "Do you hate us now?" I didn't flinch. "No," I said, "but I don't owe you anything anymore." She blinked. "But we're family." "That's not an argument," I replied. "That's an excuse." She reached into her purse and handed me an envelope, stood up, said she hoped I'd come back to them someday. I told her calmly I already did, to tell you I'm not coming back. When she left, I opened the envelope. A check. $7,870. No note, no apology, just silence with a dollar sign. I didn't cash it, not immediately. I pinned it to my wall above my desk next to a quote that changed my life. "You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm." Kayla never reached out directly again, but Marissa did. Turns out, after sharing Derek's financial lies with me, she sent the same packet of proof to a family law attorney in the state fraud office. Derek is now under investigation for wire fraud and misappropriation of family funds. Because guess what? He didn't just use my card. He also skimmed from Mom and Dad's retirement fund. The same people who once told me he's just going through a rough patch. Poetic. When I asked Marissa why she'd helped, she said, "And because you deserve backup and I couldn't sleep knowing they'd keep bleeding you." She wasn't just Derek's ex anymore, she was a truth bomb with receipts. Dad, he lost his job quietly. Rumor is, HR started digging after a certain anonymous packet arrived. He tried calling me once more. Voicemail. You've made your point, Abigail. You've embarrassed all of us, but family is not a transaction. You'll regret this. I didn't respond because here's the truth. Family is a transaction when it's always been one-sided. David and I were solid. He was there when I told him everything. The good, the ugly, the bank records. He didn't flinch. Just held my hand and said, "I'm proud of you for not letting it turn you bitter." He's the first person in my life who never made me earn his love through sacrifice. We're planning to move in together this fall. A new place. Bigger. Brighter. And no, I didn't ask anyone for money. As for the check, I cashed it. Then donated every cent to a scholarship fund for young nurses who support their families financially while in school. Because someone out there is me 5 years ago breaking her back while her family pretends it's normal. Let her know it's not. Let her know she's not alone. So where does that leave me? Stronger, quieter, wiser, still a daughter, still a sister, but no longer their lifeline. I don't carry their weight anymore. I carry my own boundaries. I carry my peace. And I carry the memory of the day I finally said, "I am not your safety net." I am my own person. They didn't understand me for that, but I love myself for it. So here's what I leave behind: the guilt, the fear, the myth that being the good one means being the one who bleeds out for others. And here's what I keep: my life. It's not perfect, but it's mine. And this time I'm not sharing it with anyone who doesn't treat me like I matter. I used to be the one they leaned on. Now I stand tall on my own. And the door I closed that day, it's still shut. Only now the key is in my pocket, and it's staying there. Story 4. My girlfriend texted from a girl's trip. "We need to talk. I think we should see other people." I replied, "Clarity is good." Then I posted my new relationship status and a photo of me handing the keys to our apartment back to the landlord. Her friend started frantically texting me, asking why her belongings were on the curb. Hi viewers, thanks for stopping by. If you've been watching the channel for a while and still haven't subscribed, now's a great time. Let's get into the story. I'm writing this from a mostly empty apartment that smells like cleaning products. It's quiet, and for the first time in about 4 days, my stomach isn't a solid knot of dread. It feels more like relief, which is a strange thing to feel after your life gets turned upside down. My girlfriend, Maya, and I had been together for 3 years. We'd been living together for 2 of them in a great apartment that we both loved. Our lease was set to expire at the end of this month, and for weeks we had been talking about renewing it for another year. We had the appointment scheduled with the landlord to sign the new paperwork this coming Friday. That detail is important. Last Saturday, Maya left for a week-long girls' trip to Miami with her 2 best friends, Chloe and Jessica. I helped her pack, drove her to the airport, and kissed her goodbye. Everything was normal. We texted a bit the first couple of days. Standard stuff, pictures of the beach, complaints about the price of drinks. Then on Tuesday night, my phone buzzed with a message that detonated everything. It was from Maya. The text read, "Hey, have had a lot of time to think out here. We need to talk when I get back. I think we should see other people. See other people." It's one of those phrases, isn't it? It's a coward's eject button. It's designed to be a conversation starter, but it's really a statement of intent. It's a way to put your partner on ice, keep them in reserve as a safety net, while you test drive other options without guilt. For 3 years I had been her partner. In the space of one text message, I was being demoted to an option. Something inside me didn't break, it just clicked into place. All the little moments of her being distant lately, the way she was glued to her phone, the vague work-stress explanations, it all came into sharp focus. The hurt was there, deep and cold, but on the surface I just felt this strange, surgical calm. She wanted clarity. Fine, I would give it to her. I stared at her message for a minute, then typed my reply. It was only 3 words. "Clarity is good." I hit send. Then I put my phone on silent and went to work. The next morning I called our landlord. I explained that our plans had changed and that we would not be renewing the lease. I confirmed that I would be vacating the property and returning the keys by our official move-out date, which was this Saturday, just 3 days away. He was surprised, but said as long as the apartment was clean and the keys were returned on time, it was no problem. Then the packing began. I was methodical. I packed my books, my clothes, my computer equipment. All my stuff was boxed up by Wednesday evening. Then I started on Maya's things. Her entire life was intertwined with mine in that apartment. I packed every piece of clothing, every shoe from her ridiculously large collection, every makeup palette, every framed photo of us. I emptied her drawers and her side of the closet. I took down her art from the walls. I boxed it all up carefully, labeling each box with a black marker. Maya clothes, Maya bathroom, Maya sentimental. I worked for 2 straight days, fueled by coffee and a grim sense of purpose. By Friday night, the apartment was divided into 2 distinct territories. My life, stacked and ready to move, and her life, neatly containerized. On Saturday morning, I had movers take my belongings to a new, smaller apartment I'd found in a frantic but successful search. Once my things were out, I began the process of moving her belongings. I hauled every single box, every bag, every piece of her furniture that wasn't built in out of the apartment and placed it neatly on the patch of grass next to the curb. I covered the entire pile with 2 large, heavy-duty tarps I bought from a hardware store in case it rained. The apartment was now completely empty. I spent the next 4 hours cleaning it from top to bottom. I patched nail holes, scrubbed floors, and cleaned the oven until it shined. It looked better than when we moved in. At 5 o'clock, I met the landlord outside. He did a walkthrough, looked impressed, and I handed him the keys. My friend, who had come to help with the final clean, took a picture of me shaking the landlord's hand, a genuine smile on my face for the first time in days. I went back to my new, quiet apartment, opened my laptop, and went on social media. I changed my relationship status to single, then I posted the photo. The caption was simple: sometimes you need to close one door to open another, handing back the keys to the old place and officially starting a new chapter. Clarity is a good thing. I didn't tag anyone. I didn't have to. Within an hour, the frantic texts began. The first was from Chloe, Maya's best friend. "Alex, what is going on? Jessica just saw a post from someone in your old building. Why are all of Maya's things on the curb?" I let the message sit there for a moment, the words glowing on my screen. I took a sip of water and started typing my reply. Update 1. The initial text from Chloe was just the first drop in what quickly became a flood. My phone started vibrating nonstop with messages from her, Jessica, and a few of their other friends who were on the Miami trip. They were all variations on the same theme: shock, confusion, and rapidly escalating outrage. "Chloe, Alex, answer me. People are taking pictures of her stuff. Are you insane? Jessica, what did you do? Maya is crying her eyes out here. We had to tell her. You need to fix this now." I decided to respond to Chloe, as she seemed the most capable of forming complete sentences. My reply was calm and factual. I wrote, "Hi Chloe. On Tuesday, Maya texted me that she wanted to see other people. I respected her decision. Our lease was expiring this weekend, so I vacated the property as required and left her belongings for her to arrange pickup." Her response came back instantly. She didn't mean break up right now. She wanted to talk when she got back. "You can't just throw her life onto the street," I replied. Her text was clear. I accepted it. The lease ended. There was nothing more to discuss. That's when my phone started ringing. It was Maya. I let it go to voicemail. A message popped up immediately. A frantic, tearful rant. She was sobbing, barely coherent, yelling about how I had misunderstood, how I was cruel, how I had betrayed her. Then another call and another. I blocked her number. Of course, she immediately started calling from Chloe's phone. I answered, putting it on speaker. "Alex, how could you?" she screamed, her voice hoarse. "My things, my furniture, it's all on the sidewalk." I kept my voice even. "Hello, Maya. Yes, the lease was up today. You ended our relationship, so I moved out." "I didn't end it. I said we should talk," she shrieked. "I was supposed to come home. Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do?" The entitlement was breathtaking. She genuinely expected me to just sit in our shared apartment for a week, waiting patiently for her to come home from her trip and decide my fate. She thought she could put me on hold. "That sounds like a problem you should have considered before you sent that text, Maya," I said. "You wanted to see other people. I assume you have a plan for that." There was a choked sound, and then Chloe's voice cut in. "This is because of Chad, isn't it? You're punishing her because of Chad." Silence. I had no idea who Chad was, but I had a very strong suspicion I was about to find out. I just waited. "Chloe, shut up." Maya hissed in the background. Too late. The pieces clicked. There was a guy. Of course there was a guy. Her time to think was a test run with someone new she'd met in Miami. She sent me that text to clear her conscience, to give herself permission to cheat without technically cheating. If things with Chad worked out, she could point to the text and say she ended it. If they didn't, she could come home and say it was all a big misunderstanding, and I was her one true love. She wanted to have her cake and eat it too, and I had just thrown the cake, the plate, and the entire table into a woodchipper. I don't know who Chad is, I said into the phone, my voice like ice, but it sounds like you do. Maybe Chad has a place for you and your things to stay. I hung up and blocked Chloe's number too. The story was now clear. She hadn't gone on a girls' trip, she'd gone on an audition. Later that evening, I got an email from the landlord. He wrote, Alex, just a heads up, I received a very distraught call from Maya. I informed her that you vacated the property legally at the end of your lease term and that she has no further tenancy rights. She was very upset, just wanted to keep you in the loop. Hope you're doing okay. My actions were logical, legal, and final. She had made her choice, and I had simply facilitated the consequences with maximum efficiency. She wanted to see other people? Fine. She was now free to do so, completely unburdened by a relationship or an apartment. Update 2, the week after Maya's disastrous return from Miami, was a masterclass in escalating blame and attempted manipulation. It seemed her vacation romance with Chad evaporated the moment he realized she came with a mountain of curbside baggage and a raging drama vortex. He was a fun time, not a moving service. Suddenly she was back in town, with no boyfriend, no apartment, and a pile of belongings slowly being picked over by curious neighbors. Her friends, I assume, helped her move everything into an emergency storage unit, a task I'm sure they enjoyed immensely. After a few days of silence which I savored, the next wave of attack began, this time from her family. Her mother called me. I made the mistake of answering. She started with a sweet, disappointed tone. Alex, honey, I am so surprised at you. Maya is just devastated. There must be some misunderstanding. I gave her the short, factual version. Hello, Mrs. Gable. Maya texted me that she wanted to end our relationship and see other people. Our lease was up. I moved out. Her tone hardened instantly. That is no excuse to throw her out like garbage. You were supposed to sign a new lease together. You did this deliberately to hurt her. She ended the relationship, I repeated calmly. My name was on the lease. I was not going to be legally and financially responsible for an apartment for a woman who was actively seeing other people. Her things were left for her to collect before the lease expired. She needs money, Alex, her mom said, shifting tactics. She had to pay for movers and a storage unit. Her things were out in the open air. Some of her designer bags could be ruined. You owe her for that. I'm not financially responsible for her choices, I said, my patience wearing thin. Goodbye. I hung up before she could respond. Next came the social media campaign. Maya posted a long, rambling story. It was a masterpiece of victimhood narrative, full of vague allusions to trust being broken and being abandoned at my most vulnerable. She posted a teary-eyed selfie with a caption about having to pick up the pieces of my life, literally, with a photo of her boxes in the storage unit. She didn't name me, but she didn't have to. The comment section filled with her followers offering sympathy and condemning the anonymous monster who did this to her. A few mutual friends messaged me, asking for my side. I didn't engage in a public battle. I just sent them a screenshot of her original text message to me. For most people with common sense, that was enough. The narrative of me being a heartless monster started to crumble when people realized I was simply reacting to her own words. The best part, however, was the text I received from Jessica, the other friend on the trip. It seemed she had a conscience. She wrote, Alex, I'm sorry about all this. What you did was harsh, but I get it. Maya was with that guy Chad all week. She told us she was going to soft launch the breakup with you so she could see how things with him went. Chloe encouraged it. I told her it was a bad idea. I just wanted you to know it wasn't all in your head. I thanked her for her honesty. It was all the validation I needed. Final update, it has been about 2 months now, and the dust has fully settled. The smear campaign against me fizzled out when the story started to leak, mostly thanks to Jessica and a few other people who saw the situation for what it was. It turns out that a story built on entitlement doesn't hold up well against one built on simple, verifiable facts. Maya's life, from what I've heard through the grapevine, is a mess. She is currently living on her friend Chloe's couch. The friendship is apparently under serious strain, as Maya is not an easy house guest and contributes nothing to bills, all while complaining constantly about how unfair her life is. She tried to make another run at Chad, but he wanted nothing to do with her drama. She even tried one last desperate move about a month ago, sending me a long, rambling email. In it, she claimed I owed her thousands of dollars for the security deposit that she believed she was entitled to, plus compensation for her emotional trauma. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the email to my lawyer, who drafted a very simple cease and desist letter. It stated that any further attempts to contact me or demand money would be treated as harassment. She went silent after that. As for me, life is good. My new apartment is smaller, but it's mine. It's calm and quiet. A few weeks ago, I received a check in the mail from my old landlord. It was my full security deposit. Included was a handwritten note. Alex, the apartment was left in immaculate condition. Thank you. Wish you all the best. Seeing that check, that note felt like the final word. It was quiet confirmation that I had done the right thing, handled my business cleanly, and closed the chapter with integrity. The ultimate irony is that Maya got exactly what she asked for in her text. She wanted to see other people. I just gave her that freedom immediately, without the safety net she assumed she would have. My revenge wasn't about being cruel. It was about refusing to participate in her game. I refused to be the backup plan. I took her at her word and acted on the logical consequences. She thought she could press pause on me while she auditioned a replacement. She learned the hard way that other people have off-switched too. She wanted clarity, and in the end, she got more of it than she ever bargained for. Story 5 at 3 a.m., I heard my fiancé in the driveway. He's sleeping. Come over now. 30 seconds later, headlights pulled up. I'm not the type to wake up in the middle of the night unless something's wrong. I'm a heavy sleeper, always have been. But that night, at exactly 3 in the morning, I snapped awake. No nightmare, no noise from inside, it was something outside. A faint sound like movement on gravel. Our bedroom window faces the driveway. I keep it cracked open because the air gets stuffy otherwise, so sometimes I hear raccoons or stray cats passing through. This wasn't that. I could hear muffled voices. I stayed still, letting my breathing stay slow so nothing seemed unusual if she happened to glance over. Then I caught it. Her voice, low but clear enough through the quiet night air. He's sleeping, come over now. It didn't slam into me like a sudden punch. It was colder than that, like stepping into a freezer. For a second, I thought I must have misheard. But 30 seconds later, I saw the glow of headlights sweep across the wall. They pulled into the driveway like they'd done it before. I tilted my head just enough to see between the blinds. A black SUV rolled to a slow stop, engine running, lights dimmed. She was already walking toward it. Barefoot in a hoodie I didn't recognize. She didn't look around nervously. She moved like someone who had rehearsed this. The driver's side door opened and a man stepped out. I didn't recognize him. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving like he knew exactly where he was going. He didn't greet her with words, at least not loud enough for me to hear, but they walked together toward the side gate leading to the backyard. Instead of bursting out like some jealous idiot, I stayed in bed, thinking fast. If I stormed out, all I'd get was a lie and maybe an argument that led nowhere. If I waited, I could figure out what was really going on. The gate clicked shut. I got up quietly, careful not to step on the one board in the floor that creaks. In the kitchen, I checked the time on the stove clock, 3:05 a.m. I pulled my phone out and opened the camera app, but I wasn't going outside. Not yet. First, I looked at the back door, unlocked. That was the first detail. Then I noticed her phone wasn't on the counter where she usually left it at night. That meant she had it with her. That was the second detail. I grabbed my own hoodie, slipped into shoes, and stepped into the shadow between the fridge and the back hallway. From there, I had a partial view through the kitchen window toward the yard. No movement. I waited. At 3:12, the gate creaked again. She stepped in first, hair slightly messy now, still barefoot but carrying something in her hand, a plastic grocery bag. Behind her, the man followed, head low. They didn't speak until they were almost at the side of the house. Then I caught just one phrase from him. Next time, earlier. My hands tightened in my pockets. He slipped out the gate again, and the SUV pulled away without any hurry. I waited until I could no longer see the taillights. Then I turned my attention back to her. She was moving toward the bathroom, still carrying the bag. I stayed where I was until I heard the shower turn on. That gave me about 10 minutes. I went straight to her handbag in the living room. It was half-zipped, and inside I found a tangle of receipts, gum wrappers, and makeup. But there was also a small folded paper. A pharmacy prescription slip dated yesterday in someone else's name. That was detail number 3. Next, I went to the kitchen counter where we kept the mail basket. Buried under a flyer, I found an envelope from a bank I didn't use. Her bank. I didn't open it yet, just took note. I returned to the bedroom before the shower stopped. When she came back in, hair damp and smelling faintly of soap, she didn't look surprised to see me awake. She just muttered something about not being able to sleep and wanting a snack. She slipped under the covers without another word. I lay there for the next hour, eyes closed but mind spinning. The next morning I started testing boundaries. I left early for work, but doubled back 5 minutes later, saying I'd forgotten a file. She was already dressed, checking her phone with the kind of absorbed focus you don't have when you're just scrolling. When she saw me, she locked the screen so fast, it was almost muscle memory. That was detail number 4. The rest of the day, I kept my schedule normal on the surface, but every gap I had was spent digging. I remembered that our shared home Wi-Fi automatically stored connection locks. That meant I could check what devices were active while I was out. By the end of lunch, I had the data. Her phone had been connected to the Wi-Fi during the exact time I'd been gone last night, but so had an unknown device. Not a laptop. Another phone, detail number 5. That evening I came home earlier than usual. She was on the couch watching TV, but I could tell her attention was split. Her phone stayed in her hand the whole time, and she kept it tilted away from me. Around 10 p.m. she went to bed early. I stayed up pretending to watch something on my laptop but listening for movement. At 11:02 I heard the faint vibration of her phone in the bedroom. Then her steps toward the front door. When I peeked around the corner, she was standing by the window, looking out like she was checking for a ride. But after a minute, she went back to the bedroom, phone in hand. It was clear now she was expecting something but holding off. By the third day, I had a skeleton of her routine mapped out. The late-night movements, the unexplained items, the second phone and the Wi-Fi log. It all lined up with someone managing more than one relationship. But I needed more than suspicion. I needed to catch her in a pattern. So I started using a backup phone I had from years ago, one I could leave recording without her noticing. That night I placed it behind a stack of cookbooks on the kitchen shelf, microphone facing the side door. At 3:04 a.m. it caught the gate opening again. Her voice, his voice, the same low, casual tone as before. I didn't just have the time now, I had proof, but I wasn't ready to confront her, not until I knew everything. By the time dawn broke on the 4th day, I was already sketching out my next move. If she thought I was predictable, I could use that. She believed I slept through everything. She believed I never checked the details. She had no idea I had already started building a timeline with times, objects, and now audio. And I knew the next step wasn't to stop her. It was to let her keep going, just enough for her to make a mistake I could turn into something she couldn't talk her way out of. That night, I reset the plan. I stayed quiet, letting her think nothing had changed. But now I was listening for every creak of the floorboards, every shift in the bed, every sound from the gate. Because the next time I wouldn't just be waiting in the dark. I'd be waiting with the lights off, the car keys ready, and the dash cam running. She thought she was bringing her secret into my driveway. She didn't realize she was walking straight into a trap. I woke up that morning with one thought. If she was willing to risk having someone in our driveway in the middle of the night, then she was confident she wouldn't be caught. That kind of confidence usually came from practice. This wasn't her first time. I didn't touch the recording I'd made yet. That was for later. Right now, I needed to test how careful she really was in daylight. We had breakfast together. She talked about a co-worker's birthday, about how she might need to stay late tonight for project deadlines. She barely looked at me except when she needed to read my reaction. I gave her nothing. By the time she left for work, I had my plan set. My job gave me flexible hours, so instead of going in, I parked 2 streets over from her office and waited. At 11:45 a.m., she came out, not with co-workers, not with lunch in hand, but walking alone toward her car. She wasn't heading to any nearby cafe. She got in, pulled out of the lot, and took a road leading away from downtown. I followed 2 cars back, never staying in her mirrors for long. She eventually parked on a narrow street lined with older houses. She walked past two, then up to a small one-story with peeling paint and an overgrown yard. I recognized the man instantly, the same guy from the SUV, leaning against the doorway waiting for her. They went inside without knocking. I kept my phone recording, timestamp visible. I didn't go near the house, no point risking her spotting me. After about 40 minutes she came out again, hair slightly disheveled, adjusting her sweater. The man stayed on the porch as she walked away, then went back inside. That was confirmation number one. The next day I needed something more concrete. Following her once could be written off as a coincidence in her mind. Catching her in a pattern, that would be different. So I spent the afternoon installing a small, motion-activated dashcam in my car that I could swivel toward any target. I also bought a basic GPS tracker online. By late evening, I'd attached it under her rear bumper, tucked where she wouldn't see it. The following morning, the GPS log showed her driving to work, except at 10:12 a.m. Her car stopped for 25 minutes in the same neighborhood I'd tailed her to yesterday. The device pinged from that house again. That was confirmation number two. On the third day, I noticed something else. She'd started making small cash withdrawals. $60 here, $80 there, always on days she was staying late. The amounts weren't large enough to trigger suspicion from the bank, but they were frequent. This detail knotted me. Cash was harder to trace, which meant she was either paying him for something or avoiding a paper trail for shared expenses. Both possibilities were ugly. I added a new element to the plan: surveillance at home. I placed a small wireless camera behind a planter near the back gate. It blended in perfectly. That night I left for drinks with friends but parked a few streets over, watching the live feed on my phone. At 9:26 p.m., the camera picked up movement, the same man, slipping through the gate like he owned the place. He stayed only 15 minutes before leaving. She didn't follow him out, which meant she stayed inside after he was gone. Now I had him on video, not just audio. At this point I had enough to confront her, but I wanted the kind of evidence she couldn't explain away even with the most elaborate lie. I wanted the whole picture, not just that she was seeing him, but how often, where, and why. So I went a step further and called in help. My friend Louis works in private security and owed me a favor. I didn't tell him every detail, just that I suspected someone was showing up at my house without permission, and that I needed to know who they were. Within 48 hours, Louis had run the man's plates from the SUV and given me his full name. A quick search in public records turned up more than I expected: prior arrests for fraud and one for assault. No stable job, lived in a rental 2 towns over. This wasn't just some casual fling. She was involved with someone whose life was built on lies and opportunism. The next major move came the following weekend. She told me she was going to visit her sister. I smiled, wished her a good trip, and waited for her to leave. Then I checked the GPS tracker. She drove straight toward the 2 exits later, pulling into the lot of a roadside motel. The GPS stayed there for 3 hours. Louis and I split up. He watched the lot from one angle while I circled the block. Eventually, I saw them through the half-open curtains of a second-floor room. They weren't just talking. When they finally left, I kept a good distance but tailed them to a gas station. She went inside to buy something while he fueled the SUV. Louis, from the opposite side, snapped photos of both of them with clear facial recognition. That was confirmation number 3, the one that locked everything in. By now, I was running 2 parallel investigations, tracking her physical movements and matching them to her financial transactions. Over the course of 2 weeks, a consistent schedule emerged. Every Tuesday and Thursday, she'd work late or visit her sister. Every Sunday afternoon, she'd take a drive to clear her head, each one matched to either that old house, the motel, or occasionally my own driveway. It was almost mechanical, like clockwork, and that was her weakness. People can hide accidents, but they can't hide patterns forever. The final push in this stage came unexpectedly. She had a habit of leaving her laptop open when she went to shower. Normally, she logged out of everything. But one evening, she forgot to close a browser tab, a web-based messaging platform I'd never seen her use. I didn't touch anything, just read the most recent lines. The chat was with someone saved under the initials VR. The tone wasn't friendly or casual. It was personal, intimate, and full of planning. She'd mentioned me by name once, followed by "he's clueless, and you should come by after midnight next week." The date matched to Tuesday. I didn't need to guess who VR was. By the end of that week, I had the evidence lined up: audio recordings of them meeting at night in my driveway, video of him entering and leaving my yard, GPS logs showing her car at his house, and the motel, photos of them together in public, messages tying her directly to planned meetings with him. But I didn't move yet, because my gut told me there was one more layer to this. Something about those cash withdrawals and the frequency of their meetings that wasn't just romance or lust. If he had a history of fraud and she was sneaking him cash, there was a decent chance she was involved in something much riskier than cheating. And if that was the case, I could bring it all down on both of them at once. I just needed one more week to be sure. That week, I let everything seem normal. I didn't follow her. I didn't check the GPS during the day. I wanted her to feel safe. On the 5th day, she set the trap herself. She told me she'd be home late on Thursday. At 10:15 p.m., the driveway camera pinged on my phone. He was there again. I watched the feed in real time as they talked briefly, then carried 2 grocery bags inside. She shut the gate behind them. Instead of rushing home, I stayed put, noting the timestamp. I wanted the full duration on record. 40 minutes later, the camera caught him leaving alone, empty-handed. This was the detail I'd been waiting for. If the bags were full going in and empty coming out, that wasn't just about seeing each other. Something was being dropped off or exchanged. And if I could figure out what, I'd have my final piece. The next part wouldn't just be about catching them. It would be about finding out what they were moving through my own house, without my knowledge. Because now, I was starting to think this wasn't only betrayal. It was something that could land her in a lot more trouble than she realized. And if I played it right, I could make sure that trouble arrived exactly when I wanted it to. By now, every piece was on the table. The audio, the video, the GPS logs, the photos, the messages, all of it painted the picture. But the grocery bag detail from last time had shifted the game. This wasn't just a late-night hookup. They were moving something through my property, and that opened a new lane for leverage. I decided I needed to see exactly what was being passed between them. The next time they tried it, I wasn't just going to watch from a distance. I was going to be here, hidden, silent, close enough to catch the details without them realizing it. The following Tuesday, I staged another late work meeting. Before leaving, I parked my car 3 blocks away and came back on foot through the rear alley. Our property backed onto a narrow strip of woods, so slipping in through the back fence without being seen was easy. I set myself in the shed, door cracked just enough to give me a line of sight on the back gate. From here, I could see both the gate and the side of the house without being lit up by the motion sensor. At 9:18 p.m., the SUV appeared again. He stepped out, carrying a duffel bag this time instead of groceries. She met him at the gate, scanned the yard quickly, and let him in. They walked straight to the back door without hesitation. I crept out of the shed once they were inside and eased up to the kitchen window. Through the gap in the curtains, I could see him pulling sealed packages out of the duffel and placing them in a large plastic container on the table. It wasn't food. The packaging was too uniform, too careful. She handed him a thick envelope in return, the kind banks give for cash withdrawals. My suspicion turned from curiosity to certainty. Whatever this was, it wasn't legal. I pulled back into the shadows and started recording a voice memo describing everything I was seeing in real time. That way, even if they caught me watching, I'd already have a timestamp to count. After he left 20 minutes later, I didn't follow him. Instead, I went inside like I'd just returned from work. She was in the shower, which meant whatever had been in that container was already hidden somewhere in the house. I moved fast. The container was gone from the kitchen, but I found it almost immediately in the guest room closet, tucked behind an old suitcase. Still sealed. I didn't open it. If this was what I thought it was, I didn't want my prints anywhere near it. Instead, I took a full set of high-resolution photos from every angle, barcodes, seals, even the manufacturer's markings on the tape. Then I put it back exactly how I'd found it. The next day, I called Louie and laid it out straight. This wasn't just infidelity. I suspected she was holding or moving something that could land her in prison. Louis told me something I'd been waiting to hear. If I could get law enforcement to show up when he was on the property, and if those packages were in plain sight, the case wouldn't just be about trespassing. That meant timing was everything. The trap had to be sprung when both the man and the packages were present. 2 nights later, I set the bait. I told her I was heading to a friend's cabin for the weekend. I packed a bag, left visibly in my car but circled back in Louis' truck, one she wouldn't recognize. We parked 2 streets away and watched the driveway via my live camera feed. At 11:02 p.m., the SUV rolled in. He got out with another duffel bag, bigger this time. She met him outside and they went straight inside without even closing the gate behind them. I gave it 5 minutes. Then Louis called in the report, unwanted trespasser with a known criminal record currently inside a residence, from his phone, using my address but his own name. When the squad car pulled up 8 minutes later, we stayed out of sight. The officers went straight for the gate, flashlights cutting across the yard. Through the side window, I could see him freeze mid-step, a package still in his hand. They knocked once, then opened the door when she didn't answer. Legally, they could. The report had been made by someone claiming to live here, and they had probable cause to detain a known offender on the premises. The moment they stepped inside, his hands went up. She started talking fast, but it didn't matter. The packages were in plain sight on the table. Louis and I came around only after they'd already escorted him out in cuffs. I walked straight inside, calm, like I'd just arrived from my trip. She looked at me like she was seeing me for the first time, not surprised I was there but terrified about what this meant. She kept asking why I called the police. I didn't answer. I just stood there as the officers cataloged the packages and read her rights. Yes, they took her too. Because possession isn't just about ownership, it's about control, and she'd been standing right there, helping him unpack when they arrived. The next 48 hours were a blur of controlled silence. She was released on bail faster than I expected, but he stayed in custody. The packages tested positive for stolen electronics, part of a shipment lifted from a warehouse 2 counties away. That tied him to an active burglary investigation and her to possession of stolen goods. I didn't need to fabricate anything. I didn't need to embellish. I just had to hand over the photos, the GPS logs, and the timestamps. When the detective asked me why I had all this, I told him the truth. I'd suspected someone was coming onto my property without permission, and I'd documented everything for safety. That was enough to keep me clear of the mess, while keeping her buried in it. By the end of the week, she'd moved out, not because she wanted to, but because I'd filed for a temporary restraining order citing the trespassing, the police call, and the risk to my safety from her associate. It was granted in less than 24 hours. I boxed her things and left them on the porch with a note listing the date and time she could collect them under police escort. She came once, eyes down, saying nothing. She didn't ask about us, or try to spin a story. I think by then she knew there wasn't a single version of this that didn't make her look exactly like what she was. If it had just been about her sneaking someone into my driveway, I could have ended it quietly. But once I realized stolen property was moving through my house, there was no walking away. Her choices weren't just hers anymore. She'd made me a silent participant by proximity. If the police had caught wind of those packages without my side of the story, it wouldn't have been her alone they were questioning. This way, I didn't just get out clean. I made sure the people who actually broke the law took the weight of it. When I look back now, I realize the first stage was about hearing that one damning sentence at 3 a.m. The second was about proving she was lying. But this was where the trap closed, where her secret life stopped being her private game and became something the law cared about. And there was still one final card to play, because the court case was coming, and with it, the chance to make sure she couldn't rewrite history in her favor. The weeks after her arrest felt strangely quiet. The SUV never came back. The driveway camera stayed uneventful. For the first time in months, the house didn't feel like a place where I had to watch every shadow. But the silence wasn't the end. It was the pause before everything she had built for herself collapsed in court. Her arraignment came first. I didn't have to be there, but I went anyway. I sat far back in the gallery and watched her walk in wearing a plain blouse and dark pants, hair tied up like she was trying to look respectable. Her lawyer whispered to her constantly, but she never looked around the room to see if I was there. The charges against her were read, and though she pled not guilty, the evidence laid out by the prosecutor in that short session already told me this was going to be bad for her. The photos, the timestamps, the packages, the police report, all of it lined up too neatly. What I hadn't expected was the separate charge they announced for her companion. He wasn't just being held for possession and burglary, he was being tied to a string of thefts across 3 counties, and the state was consolidating cases. That meant his trial would be bigger, messier, and full of people willing to testify against him to get lighter sentences. By the second hearing, my name was officially listed as the detective I'd spoken to early on told me to be ready to testify not just about what I'd seen, but about the steps I took to document it. I gave them everything. The GPS logs, the audio, the video, the photos of the packages. The DA's office didn't just thank me. They started treating me like a cooperating informant, which meant my side of the story was now the official one. That was exactly where I wanted to be. Word started spreading in her circle. Mutual friends who'd been distant started reaching out, not to apologize, but to ask for details. They wanted to know if it was true that she'd been arrested in my kitchen with stolen property on the table. I didn't embellish. I didn't need to. The plain facts were already bad enough. Her family didn't contact me directly, but I know they heard. A neighbor who still speaks to her parents told me there had been a screaming match in their house when the arrest became public record. A month later, she tried to call me. I didn't answer. Then I got an email from her lawyer asking if I'd consider a meeting to clear the air. I ignored it. Whatever she wanted, it wasn't going to help me, and I didn't owe her the dignity of a conversation. I'd spent enough time listening to her talk her way around things when I didn't have the proof. Now that I had it, I didn't need her explanations. The trial date finally arrived for her partner. She testified on his behalf, or at least she tried to. From what I heard later, her statement was riddled with contradictions. She couldn't keep her story straight about why he was in my house, why the packages were there, or why she had cash ready for him. The prosecutor tore it apart, piece by piece, and the jury didn't take long to deliver it. He was convicted on multiple counts and sentenced to several years in prison. Her own case took a different turn. With him gone and no one to shield her, her lawyers started negotiating. In exchange for a guilty plea to a lesser charge, she'd avoid prison but serve a year of probation, pay fines, and perform community service. It still went on her record, for someone who had always been careful about her image, that Mark was going to follow her for the rest of her life. I didn't attend her sentencing. I didn't need to watch her try to look remorseful for the judge. I was more interested in what came next. With the restraining order still in place, she couldn't come near me, and with the conviction on her record, her professional life started to unravel. The job she'd been so proud of quietly let her go. Mutual acquaintances told me she tried to apply elsewhere, but background checks and whispered rumors kept getting in the way. I sold the house not long after. There was no reason to keep living in a place that held so much of her shadow. I used the sale as a chance to relocate, choosing a smaller place in a quieter area. The cameras came with me, not because I expected the same thing to happen again, but because once you've seen how easily someone can turn your home into a stage for their double life, you don't stop being careful. Every now and then, I'd see her name in court dockets online. Minor infractions, usually failures to meet probation requirements or missed community service hours. It told me everything I needed to know about whether she'd learned anything from this. I thought about the night it all started more than once. The sound of her voice at 3 a.m. telling someone he could come over because I was sleeping. At the time, it felt like a small crack in the wall. Now I could see it for what it was, the first clear sign that the life I thought I had wasn't real. The best part of all of it was how little I had to say in the end. No dramatic confrontation, no shouting match where she could twist my words. Just silence, evidence, and the weight of her own actions closing in on her. The law had done what it was supposed to do, and I'd walked away without a single false charge sticking to me. Some people would call it luck. I call it preparation. The moment I suspected something, I didn't just react. I started collecting proof. I didn't tip my hand too soon. And when the right moment came, I let the trap close on its own. That's why I never once had to defend myself in court, never once had to explain away something I couldn't prove. Her life after all of this became smaller. Mine didn't. I rebuilt quietly and on my own terms, without the weight of her lies or the risk of her chaos dragging me down. The people who had once believed her stories didn't anymore, not after the public record showed exactly what happened. And the people who knew me before this didn't change how they saw me. If anything, they respected me more for not letting it drag me into a mud fight. It's strange how one overheard sentence in the middle of the night can set off a chain of events that ends with court cases, convictions, and entirely separate lives. But that's what happened. She made her choices and I made mine. And in the end, her world got smaller while mine opened up again. The last time I saw her was by accident, months after everything was over. She was walking out of a grocery store, paper bag in hand, head down. She didn't see me, I didn't say anything. There was nothing left to say. Everything worth saying had already been said in the form of police reports, court filings, and a record that would follow her for years. It wasn't revenge in the way most people imagine it. There was no shouting in the street, no satisfaction from watching her cry. It was quieter than that and far more permanent. The best consequence is the one that doesn't need you to keep it alive. And so I left it there. And that's the story. If you're still here, that means you're one of us. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I drop new chaos every single day. And trust me, tomorrow's story, it's even worse than this one. Story 6, my friends all have better boyfriends than you, she announced at dinner with her friends. So I paid and left forever. Now she's still single, wants me back, and her friends won't even set her up anymore. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. This happened 4 years ago, but I'm posting about it now because I think I need to process what the hell just happened. I met Michelle when I was 25 and she was 23. We both worked downtown. I was an accountant at a mid-sized firm. She was in marketing at some startup. We met at a happy hour through mutual friends and hit it off immediately. Michelle was gorgeous, outgoing, and had this infectious energy that made everyone want to be around her. For the first year, things were great. I thought I was the luckiest guy in the world. Michelle was fun, spontaneous, and seemed to genuinely enjoy spending time with me. I'd bring her flowers from the grocery store, plan little picnics in the park, cook dinner for her when she had stressful days at work. She'd laugh and call me sweet, and I felt like I was doing everything right. The problem started when she became close friends with Brittany and Ashley from her yoga class. Both of them had boyfriends who were, let's say, more flashy than I was. Brittany's boyfriend Derek drove a BMW, wore expensive clothes, and constantly talked about his investment portfolio. Ashley's boyfriend Marcus owned some kind of business and was always buying her jewelry or taking her to expensive restaurants. At first, Michelle would come back from hanging out with them and make little comments. Brittany showed me this bracelet Derek got her. It's gorgeous. Or Ashley said Marcus surprised her with a weekend in Napa. That sounds amazing. I'd suggest we plan a weekend trip, and she'd get this look on her face like I'd suggested we go camping in a swamp. Maybe something a little more special, she'd say. The group dinner started about 6 months into Michelle and I dating. Derek would pick restaurants where the cheapest entree was $40, then act surprised when I'd glance at the menu prices. Marcus would show up wearing a different expensive watch every time, making sure everyone noticed. I'm not broke, but I'm an accountant at a regional firm, not an investment banker. I budget for things. I comparison shop. I think spending $200 on dinner for 2 people is insane when you could make something better at home for $20. Michelle started getting quiet during these dinners. She'd sit there while Brittany and Ashley gushed about their latest gifts or trips, and I could feel her shrinking next to me. When I'd try to contribute to the conversation, someone would inevitably change the subject or talk over me. Jake's more practical than romantic, Michelle started saying when her friends would ask about our relationship. It was always said with this little laugh, like she was apologizing for me. The worst part was watching her face during these dinners. She'd look at Derek's watch or Marcus's clothes, then glance at my off-the-rack button-down and khakis with obvious disappointment. I started dreading these group hangouts, but Michelle insisted they were important for her social life. Things escalated over the next year. Michelle stopped appreciating the little things I did for her. When I'd bring her flowers, she'd say, "You don't need to do that," but not in a sweet way, more like she was embarrassed by the gesture. When I planned a nice evening at home with her favorite takeout and a movie, she'd spend the whole time scrolling through Instagram, looking at her friends' posts from whatever expensive restaurant they were at. She started pushing me to spend money I didn't have on things that didn't matter to me. Designer clothes, expensive dinners, a nicer car. When I'd explain that I was saving for a down payment on a house, she'd get this frustrated look and say, "You're always saving for something." Her friends became more openly condescending toward me. Derek would make comments about guys who play it safe, while looking directly at me. Ashley would talk about how important it was to know your worth whenever relationship topics came up. Michelle never defended me. If anything, she seemed to agree with them. The final dinner happened on a Friday night in October. We were at some steakhouse downtown with Brittany, Derek, Ashley, and Marcus. Everyone ordered expensive cocktails and the most expensive steaks on the menu. I got the chicken and a beer, which apparently was embarrassing enough to make Michelle physically cringe. Halfway through dinner, Derek announced he was taking Brittany to Paris for the weekend. "Just because," he said, grinning. "Sometimes you have to remind your girl how special she is." Brittany squealed and showed off pictures on her phone while Ashley and Michelle leaned in to look. I watched Michelle's face fall as she scrolled through photos of first-class seats and fancy hotel rooms. Then Marcus pulled out a Tiffany box and slid it across the table to Ashley. "Saw this and thought of you, babe." Ashley opened it to reveal a diamond tennis bracelet that probably cost more than I make in 3 months. She practically shrieked and started showing it to everyone while Marcus soaked up the attention. "You guys are so lucky," Michelle said, but there was this edge to her voice I'd never heard before. She ordered another martini. I could feel the evening going south, so I tried to redirect the conversation. "That's really nice, Marcus. Ashley, it looks great on you." "Thanks, Jake," Ashley said in that patronizing tone people use with children. "It's important to be with someone who prioritizes making you feel special." Michelle was getting visibly agitated. She kept drinking and making little comments under her breath. When the check came, I offered to pay for both of us like I always did. That's when she snapped. "You know what? I'm tired of pretending." Everyone stopped talking and looked at her. "What do you mean?" I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I knew where this was going. "Look around this table, Jake. My friends all have better boyfriends than you." The entire restaurant seemed to go quiet. Brittany and Ashley exchanged glances. Derek smirked like he was watching his favorite TV show. "Michelle," I started. "No, I'm serious. Brittany gets Paris trips, Ashley gets jewelry. What do I get?" "Dinner at Olive Garden and flowers from the grocery store." My face felt hot. "I thought you liked." "Look at what they get. Excitement. Adventure. Someone who actually tries to impress them." "What do I get?" "Boring stability from someone who thinks splitting a Netflix password is romantic." Brittany looked uncomfortable now. "Michelle, maybe we should. I'm embarrassed to be here with you." Michelle continued, her voice getting louder. "They all know I could do so much better." The table was dead silent. A couple at the next table was openly staring. I felt like I was going to throw up. I reached for my wallet, pulled out enough cash to cover everyone's meals and placed it on the table. Then I stood up. "Excuse me," I said quietly. "Where are you going?" Michelle demanded. "Home. You ladies enjoy your evening." I walked out of that restaurant and drove straight to my apartment. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, replaying what had just happened. The woman I'd been in love with for 2 years had just publicly humiliated me, reduced our entire relationship to a comparison with her friends' sugar daddies, and announced that she was embarrassed to be with me. I went inside, poured myself a drink, and started thinking clearly for the first time in months. Michelle came home around midnight, stumbling drunk and apparently expecting me to comfort her. "Jake, are you awake? I think I drank too much." I pretended to be asleep. The next morning she acted like nothing had happened. Made coffee, asked about my weekend plans, mentioned wanting to see a movie later. It was surreal. "About last night," I finally said. "What about it? What you said at dinner?" She waved her hand dismissively. "I was drunk. You know I didn't mean it," but she did mean it. I could see it in her eyes and the way she'd been looking at me for months. She was ashamed of me. Ashamed of my car, my clothes, my gifts, my job, my way of showing love. She wanted me to be someone else entirely. "I think we need to take a break," I said. She laughed. "Don't be dramatic." I said I was sorry, except she hadn't actually said she was sorry. "I'm going to stay at my friend Tom's place for a few days. I think we both need some space to figure out what we want." "Jake, you're being ridiculous." I packed a bag and left. Michelle called me 6 times that day. I didn't answer. By Monday, she was furious. Left voicemails calling me immature and demanding I come home so we could talk like adults. By Wednesday, she was panicked. Started texting constantly, promising we could work things out. I spent that week at Tom's place, really thinking about our relationship for the first time without Michelle's presence influencing my thoughts. I realized that for months, maybe even a year, I'd been trying to become someone I wasn't to make her happy. I'd been apologizing for being thoughtful instead of flashy, for being stable instead of exciting, for showing love through actions instead of expensive gestures. I'd been apologizing for being myself. On Saturday, I went back to the apartment while Michelle was at brunch with her friends. I packed all my stuff and left my key on the counter. I didn't leave a note because honestly, what was there to say? She'd made her feelings about me crystal clear. I found a studio apartment across town and moved in that weekend. Changed my phone number. Blocked Michelle on all social media. Told my friends and family that we'd broken up and I didn't want to discuss it. Michelle apparently lost her mind when she realized I'd actually left. Tom told me she'd called him crying, begging for my new number. She showed up at my old job, but I'd already put in for a transfer to our other office across the city. For the first few months, she tried everything. Had Brittany and Ashley reach out to me on social media. Sent messages through mutual friends. Even had her sister call me once talking about how heartbroken Michelle was. I didn't respond to any of it. The thing is, I wasn't even angry anymore after those first few weeks. I was just done. Michelle had shown me exactly how she felt about me and I believed her. There's no coming back from being told you're an embarrassment, that your girlfriend's friends all have better boyfriends, that everything you do to show love is inadequate. I threw myself into work and got promoted to senior associate within 8 months. Started going to the gym regularly. Picked up some hobbies I'd abandoned during the Michelle years. Reconnected with friends I'd neglected. For the first time in years, I felt like myself again. Through mutual friends, I heard bits and pieces about Michelle's post-breakup life. Apparently, she'd thrown herself into dating apps determined to find her upgrade. She went out with guys who looked impressive on paper. Finance bros, entrepreneurs, guys with expensive cars and designer clothes. From what I heard, it wasn't going well. One guy turned out to be married. Another was living off his parents' money and had no actual job. A third one expected her to sleep with him on the first date because he'd paid for an expensive dinner. She keeps complaining that men don't treat women right anymore. Tom's girlfriend Sarah told me one day, says they're all just looking for hookups. I felt a brief flash of sympathy. Then remembered sitting in that restaurant listening to Michelle explain why I wasn't good enough for her. About a year after our breakup, the friend group she'd valued so much started falling apart. Derek, the Paris trip boyfriend, got caught cheating on Brittany with someone from his gym. Turns out his investment portfolio was mostly credit card debt, and his BMW was leased. When Brittany found out, she posted all the details on social media for everyone to see. Marcus, the jewelry-buying businessman, turned out to be running some kind of multi-level marketing scheme. When it collapsed, Ashley discovered he'd been buying her gifts with borrowed money and was actually broke. She dumped him and had to return most of the jewelry to pay off debts he'd racked up in her name. Suddenly, Michelle's friends all have better boyfriends situation didn't look so appealing. I started dating again about 18 months after the breakup. Nothing serious at first, just casual dinners and getting to know people. It was refreshing to meet women who appreciated thoughtfulness, who didn't roll their eyes when I brought flowers or planned low-key dates. That's how I met Emma. I was at Barnes and Noble on a Saturday afternoon browsing the biography section when this woman next to me dropped a stack of books. I helped her pick them up and noticed they were all children's literature. "Thank you," she said, smiling. "I'm a kindergarten teacher, always looking for new books for my classroom. That's really cool. I bet that's rewarding work." "It is. What do you do?" "I'm an accountant." "Not nearly as interesting as teaching 5-year-olds. She laughed. "Are you kidding? Numbers make sense. 5-year-olds are chaos with tiny shoes. We ended up talking for 2 hours. Emma was warm, funny, and genuinely interested in hearing about my work, my family, my thoughts on everything from books to travel to what we'd wanted to be when we grew up. When I mentioned that I was thinking about going back to school for my CPA, she got excited. That's amazing. What made you decide to pursue that? Not why would you want more school, or isn't that a lot of work, just genuine enthusiasm for my goals. We started dating slowly. Emma appreciated the small gestures I made, flowers, home-cooked dinners, remembering things she'd mentioned in passing. She'd light up when I'd plan thoughtful dates instead of expensive ones. When I made her breakfast on weekend mornings, she'd tell me it was the most romantic thing anyone had ever done for her. You pay attention. She told me one evening after I'd surprised her with tickets to see an author she'd mentioned loving. I've never dated anyone who actually listened like you do. With Emma, I felt like being myself was not just acceptable, but appreciated. She made more money than Michelle had as a teacher, but she was thrilled when I'd cook dinner for us instead of going out. She loved our quiet evenings at home, our weekend hikes, our conversations about books and future plans. A year and a half into dating Emma, I proposed. Nothing flashy, just the two of us on the hiking trail where we'd had our first real conversation about wanting the same things in life. She said yes before I finished asking the question. Planning our engagement party was completely different from anything I'd experienced with Michelle. Emma wanted something simple and joyful. Good food, people we loved, celebrating the fact that we'd found each other. No competitions, no showing off, just happiness. That's where Michelle comes into this story again. Last Saturday night, Emma and I were at our engagement party at Tom's backyard. About 50 people, nothing fancy, just friends and family celebrating with us. Emma looked beautiful in a simple blue dress, and I couldn't stop smiling watching her talk with my parents, who absolutely adored her. I was getting drinks from the cooler when I saw a familiar figure by the gate. Michelle wearing a dress that was way too formal for a backyard party, holding a gift and looking uncertain. My stomach dropped. I hadn't seen her in almost 3 years. I walked over before she could get to the main party area. "Hi Jake," she said quietly. "Congratulations. I heard you got engaged." "Thank you, Michelle, you can't be here. I know, I brought a gift. I wanted to congratulate you both." "How did you even know about this?" "Sarah posted something on Instagram. I saw the address. I glanced back at the party. Emma was talking with my sister, completely unaware of the drama unfolding by the gate. I just want to say I'm happy for you." Michelle continued. "You look really happy. I am, but you need to leave." Can I just meet her?" "Emma, just to say congratulations." "No, please, Jake. I know things ended badly between us, but I've changed. I've grown up a lot." I studied her face. She looked older, tired in a way that had nothing to do with physical exhaustion. Her confidence was completely gone, replaced by something that looked like desperation. "Michelle, I'm engaged to someone I love very much. This is our celebration. You being here is inappropriate. I know, Her voice cracked. "I made such a huge mistake with you. I see that now. Good. I'm glad you figured that out. But that doesn't change anything, doesn't it? I mean, we had something real." Before I screwed it up, I looked at her for a long moment. Then back at Emma, who was now laughing at something my dad had said. "We never had anything real, Michelle. Real relationships don't involve one person being embarrassed by the other. Real love doesn't come with conditions about how much money you spend or what car you drive." But I was young and stupid. I didn't know what mattered. You just decided I didn't matter enough. I could see tears starting in her eyes, but I felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, not pity. Just a mild annoyance that she was disrupting my happy evening. "I should go," she said finally. "Yes, you should." I watched her walk back to her car and drive away. Then I went back to the party, kissed my fiancé, and continued celebrating the best thing that had ever happened to me. Emma asked me later who the woman at the gate was. Someone from my past. I said nobody important. And that was the truth. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments. Story 7, she declared, "I need a man who can handle me." After her third public tantrum this month, I said, "Good luck finding him." When she got served papers for the harassment suit from the restaurant staff, she found out no one had to handle anything. I, 28 male, have been dating Melody, 26, for about 8 months. When we first met, she seemed passionate and fiery in a good way. She was confident, spoke her mind, and I admired that. What I didn't realize was that passionate was code for will scream at service workers when things don't go her way. The first incident happened about 3 months into dating. We went to this Italian place for dinner. The waiter accidentally brought her chicken parm instead of eggplant parm. Simple mistake, right? She went off. Not just excuse me, I ordered the eggplant, but full volume. Are you kidding me? How hard is it to write down an order? The poor kid was maybe 19, looked ready to cry. I apologized. She rolled her eyes at me and said I was too soft. Second incident was at a sushi place. They were out of salmon. She demanded to speak to the manager, called the hostess incompetent, and said the restaurant was a joke. We got asked to leave. She posted a scathing review while we waited for our Uber, showing it to me like she'd won something. The third incident. Man, the third one was last Tuesday at this family-owned Mexican restaurant we'd been to before. They knew us there, or at least they knew her. I could see the hostess tense up when we walked in. Everything started fine. We ordered, drinks came out, then her enchiladas arrived and apparently had too much sauce. She flagged down our server Rosa, who's worked there for years and is the sweetest person. Melody didn't just send it back, she made a scene, stood up plate in hand, voice carrying across the entire restaurant. This is drowning in sauce, it's inedible. What kind of kitchen serves this? Rosa tried to apologize, offered to remake it. Melody cut her off. You people never get it right. Every time we come here, something's wrong. This was a lie. We'd eaten there maybe 4 times, no issues before she started her crusades. That's when I'd had enough. I stood up and said, Melody, that's enough, sit down. She whipped around to face me. Excuse me, don't tell me what to do. If you were a real man, you'd be backing me up instead of taking their side. I stayed calm. I'm not taking anyone's side. I'm asking you to stop yelling at people who are trying to do their job. Her face went red. You know what? I need a man who can handle me, not some pushover who apologizes for me. I pulled out my wallet, left $60 on the table for our $30 tab, looked her dead in the eye and said, good luck finding him. Then I walked out. She followed me to the parking lot, alternating between screaming that I was pathetic and begging me to come back inside. I got in my car and left. She had her own car there, so I didn't strand her. That was Tuesday. It's now Saturday. She's blown up my phone, texts, calls, the works, everything from I'm sorry, I was just frustrated to you're a coward who can't handle a strong woman to please, can we talk, to I'm blocking you since you clearly don't care. She didn't block me, but here's where it gets interesting. Yesterday I got a call from Rosa. Yes, the server. She got my number from our reservation history. I always made the reservations. She called to check if I was okay because she felt bad about what happened. I told her I was fine. Apologized again for Melody's behavior. Rosa then said something that made my jaw drop. Actually, I'm calling about something else too. The owner wanted me to let you know that we've decided to pursue legal action against your girlfriend. This wasn't the first incident, and we have security footage of her previous outbursts, including throwing a drink at another server last month. Wait, what? Melody threw a drink at someone? When? Rosa explained it happened when Melody came in with her friends for lunch. I had no idea. The server she assaulted wanted to press charges, but the owner talked them out of it. This time, with 3 documented incidents and multiple witnesses, they're done. I thanked Rosa for the heads up and asked if they needed anything from me. She said they might need a witness statement, but would let me know. So now I'm sitting here reading Melody's latest text. I'm coming over tomorrow to get my things, and you will talk to me like an adult, knowing she's about to get served papers for a warrant. The other part remembers her screaming at a 19-year-old kid for mixing up an order. I think I'll just let this play out. Update 1. Holy shit, you guys were right about extinction. Wait, no, let me not use that phrase. You were right that things would escalate. So Melody did come by Sunday to get her things, literally just a toothbrush, phone, charger, and hoodie. I had everything in a bag by the door. She tried to push past me to come inside for a real conversation, but I held firm. That's when she hit me with, you know what, you're right. I need to work on my temper. I've been thinking about what you said. For about 2.5 seconds I thought maybe she'd had a revelation. Then she continued, and I realized you trigger me. You're too passive and it makes me angry. If you were more assertive, I wouldn't get so frustrated with incompetent people. The mental gymnastics folks, Olympic level. I just said, okay, Melody, good luck with everything, and started closing the door. She blocked it with her foot and said, we're not done talking. That's when I noticed my neighbor Kevin watching from his driveway. I gave him a nod, he nodded back. Melody noticed and immediately switched to tears. Why are you being so cruel? We can work this out. I told her to leave or I'd call the police. She left, but not before informing me that I'd regret losing the best thing that ever happened to me. Monday was quiet. Tuesday was quiet. I started to relax. Wednesday she got served at work. How do I know? Because she called me 43 times. Yes, I counted between 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. I didn't answer any of them. The voicemails progressed from "what did you do to this? Is your fault" to "I'm going to sue you for defamation" to complete incoherent screaming. But the real kicker came Thursday. Rosa called me again. Apparently, Melody showed up at the restaurant Wednesday night demanding to speak to the owner. They refused to let her in. They'd already started the process for a restraining order. She stood outside for an hour, alternating between yelling that she was going to own this place when she was done suing them and crying that this was ruining her life. Someone called the cops. She got escorted away but not arrested. She technically wasn't trespassing since she stayed on the sidewalk, but here's where she really screwed herself. Someone filmed the whole thing and it went mini viral on TikTok. Karen has meltdown outside restaurant that banned her. I know this because my coworker Troy sent it to me Friday morning with "Bro, is this your ex?" 1.2 million views. The comments were not kind. Melody found out about the video Friday afternoon. How do I know? Because she broke the no contact I'd established and showed up at my apartment, not to apologize, not to discuss, to demand that I make them take it down. I didn't open the door. I talked to her through it, told her she needed to leave immediately or I'd call the police. She screamed that I was probably the one who filmed it and that she knew I was behind everything. My neighbor Kevin came out again, God bless Kevin, and very loudly said, "Hey man, need me to call the cops? I'm recording this for evidence if you need it." She left, but not before keying my car on her way out. And yes, Kevin got that on video too, including her license plate as she peeled out. So Friday night I'm filing a police report for vandalism. The detective taking my statement said, "Let me guess, bad breakup?" I gave him the short version. He shook his head and said, "You might want to consider a restraining order too. This type tends to escalate." The estimate for my car, $1,200 in damage. She gouged coward into the driver's side. Saturday today started with a text from an unknown number. It was Melody's friend Brittany. "You're seriously going to let them ruin her life over some stupid complaints? She could lose her job. Grow some balls and fix this." I didn't respond. An hour later, another unknown number. This time Melody's mom. A paragraph about how I led her daughter on and abandoned her in her time of need. And how real men don't let their women get attacked like this. I didn't respond to that either. But the universe has a sense of humor. Around 2 p.m. I get a call from my insurance company. Someone, guess who, called them claiming to be my wife and tried to cancel my auto insurance policy. Fortunately, she didn't have any of the necessary information beyond my name and phone number, so they called me to verify. I explained the situation. They put a note on my account requiring a password for any changes. As I'm typing this, I just got an email from Rosa. The restaurant owner wants to know if I'd be willing to provide a statement about the pattern of behavior I witnessed. They're building a case not just for harassment but for defamation. Apparently, Melody has been leaving reviews on every platform possible, claiming food poisoning, roaches, racist staff, all lies. I'm going to help them, because you know what? Actions have consequences, and nobody has to handle anyone who treats people like garbage. I'll update when more happens, because based on the trajectory, more will definitely happen. Update 2. The last 2 weeks have been educational. Remember how I said more would definitely happen? Understatement of the year. First, let me address the restraining order situation since everyone kept asking. Yes, I filed for one. The hearing is next month. My lawyer, yes, I had to get a lawyer, says with Kevin's videos, the police report, and the documented harassment, it's pretty much a slam dunk. But let's get to the of what's happened. The Monday after my last update, Melody apparently decided that if she was going down, she'd take everyone with her. She created a Twitter X account called Exposing Restaurant Scams and started posting wild accusations about multiple restaurants in our area, not just the Mexican place. Suddenly, every restaurant where she'd ever had a bad experience was part of some conspiracy to silence strong women. The Mexican restaurant. According to her, they served expired meat. The sushi place that kicked us out. They were apparently a money laundering front. The Italian restaurant with the wrong order, health code violations galore. She tagged the health department in every post. She tagged local news stations. She tagged food bloggers. She went nuclear. But here's the thing about lying on the internet, receipts matter, and Melody didn't have any. The Mexican restaurant's owner, Mr. Gutierrez, is not playing around. He hired a legit law firm. They sent her a cease and desist within 48 hours. When that didn't stop her, they filed a defamation suit. The other restaurants, they're joining forces. There's now a group lawsuit. How do I know all this? Because Melody's brilliant legal strategy was to, wait for it, represent herself. I found this out when she posted on Facebook. I wasn't blocked there. Apparently she forgot. Asking if anyone knew legal precedents for free speech in restaurant reviews. The comments were a beautiful mix of girl get a lawyer and this you, with links to the TikTok video. But the real cherry on top came last Thursday. I get a call from my boss asking me to come to his office. My stomach dropped. I'm thinking she's somehow gotten to my work. Nope. Turns out a process server had shown up looking for me. My boss was cool about it. Said he appreciated me giving him a heads up about the situation. I told him about the restraining order in case she showed up. The papers. I was being called as a witness in the restaurant's case. They needed my testimony about the dates and details of the incidents I witnessed. But wait, there's more. Friday night I'm at home making dinner when I hear commotion outside. I look out the window and see 2 cop cars in front of the building next door. I'm being nosy, I'll admit it, when I see them walking Melody out in handcuffs. Turns out, and I only know this because Kevin is apparently the neighborhood information hub, she'd been staying with some guy she met on a dating app who lived in the building next to mine. She told him I was her abusive ex who was stalking her and convinced him to let her stay there to hide. Why was she arrested? She violated the cease and desist by posting a new video claiming Mr. Gutierrez was connected to the cartel and that's why he could afford lawyers. She posted it from the guy's apartment. The IP address led them right to her. The dude she was staying with, he kicked her out immediately and told the cops he had no idea about any of this. He looked terrified. Poor guy just thought he was helping someone in need. Saturday morning her mom called again. This time I answered because I wanted to hear this. Are you happy now? My daughter is facing criminal charges. She could go to jail. I said, ma'am, I haven't done anything except refuse to date someone who abuses service workers and files false complaints. Everything else is a consequence of her own actions. She's just passionate. You men today can't handle a woman who speaks her mind. Speaking your mind and defamation are 2 different things. Also, she keyed my car. She was emotional, I hung up. But the best part, remember the TikTok video? A local news station picked it up. They did a whole segment on when bad reviews go too far and interviewed Mr. Gutierrez. He was classy, didn't name Melody specifically, just talked about how false reviews can destroy small businesses and why they had to take legal action. The news segment went viral too. The restaurant has been packed since it aired. People are showing up specifically to support them. They had to hire extra staff for the weekend rush. Meanwhile, Melody lost her job. Not because of the lawsuit, though that didn't help, but because she called in sick the day she got arrested, and someone from her company saw the arrest record online when it posted. Turns out getting arrested for criminal defamation violates their social media policy. Her latest strategy, she's claiming mental health issues, posted a long Facebook rant about how she's neurodivergent and everyone is discriminating against her communication style. The comments were not supportive, especially from actual neurodivergent people telling her that being an AH isn't a mental health condition. My car is still being repaired, insurance is covering it, they're going after her for the deductible. I'm still getting random messages from her friends and family about how I'm ruining her life. The restaurant cases are moving forward, the criminal case is moving forward. My restraining order hearing is in 2 weeks. And Melody? Last I heard, through the legal grapevine, she's trying to crowdfund for her legal defense. It's raised $47. I almost feel bad, almost. Then I remember Rose's face when Melody was screaming at her. I remember the 19-year-old kid she made cry. I remember her saying, "You people never get it right." Nah, I don't feel bad at all. Final update. I know I said the last one would be final, but the conclusion of this saga is too good not to share. The restraining order hearing was something else. Melody showed up looking like she was going to a job interview. Super professional outfit, hair done, the works. I guess she thought she could charm the judge. She'd hired a lawyer with what I assume was her parents' money because that crowdfund never broke $100. Her lawyer tried to paint me as vindictive, claiming I was actively working to destroy her life, and that the vandalism was a momentary lapse in judgment during emotional distress. My lawyer presented Kevin's videos, bless that man, the police reports, screenshots of all the texts and calls, the insurance fraud attempt. Yes, trying to cancel someone's insurance counts as fraud. Witness statement from my employer about the process server. Character statements from neighbors about the night she showed up screaming. Extest gamut. The judge asked Melody directly, "You damaged the plaintiff's vehicle." She said I was upset. He abandoned me during a difficult time. Judge, that's not what I asked. Did you damage his vehicle? Yes. Restraining order granted. 2 years, no contact direct or indirect, stay 500 feet away from my home and workplace. But the real entertainment came from the restaurant lawsuit updates. Remember how she was representing herself initially? Well, her new lawyer took one look at the case and convinced her to settle. All 3 restaurants agreed to drop the criminal charges if she, 1, paid $15,000 in damages split between them. 2, posted public apologies on all platforms where she defamed them. 3, agreed to never enter any of their establishments again. 4, attended anger management for 6 months. She took the deal, but posting those apologies almost killed her. I saw them before she deleted everything. The Mexican restaurant one was beautiful. I apologized to restaurant name for my false statements regarding their business. All claims I made about food safety, criminal connections, and staff behavior were fabricated. I take full responsibility for attempting to damage their reputation due to personal dissatisfaction with their service. The comments before she deleted, brutal. Someone found all her old reviews going back years. She'd accused a pizza place of putting bugs in her food, a coffee shop of intentionally burning her drink, a nail salon of trying to poison her with toxic fumes. Pattern much? Her job prospects? Dead. Someone created a website called Don't Hire Melody.com. Not using her real name here, but you get the idea. With all the public court documents, news articles, and that original TikTok video. It's the first thing that comes up when you Google her name. Her lawyer sent them a cease and desist. The website owner added the cease and desist to the site, but here's the twist nobody saw coming. Remember the guy she was staying with when she got arrested? Turns out he's a documentary filmmaker. A documentary filmmaker. He's making a film about false victimhood in the digital age. And she signed a release when she stayed with him. Apparently his apartment agreement includes this for all guests. He films everything for potential projects. She can't even sue him because she signed the release. The last I heard from her mom was a voicemail saying they were moving Melody to live with relatives in another state for a fresh start. Good luck to those relatives, I guess. The Mexican restaurant? They're thriving. They actually put up a sign that says featured in the news. Come try our 2 saucy enchiladas. Their Yelp rating went from 4.2 to 4.8 stars. Rosa got promoted to manager. As for me, I'm in therapy working through why I ignored so many red flags early on. My therapist says codependency issues from growing up with an alcoholic parent made me normalize volatile behavior. Working on it. Started dating someone new last week. We went to dinner. The waiter mixed up our orders. She laughed and said, "No worries, this looks good too." It was the hottest thing I'd ever seen. To everyone who says she sounds mentally ill, have some compassion. Mental illness isn't an excuse to abuse service workers. She made choices. Those choices had consequences. Nobody had to handle her. The legal system did that just fine. Kevin and I are buddies now. We have beers on Fridays. He's thinking about starting a security camera installation business as a side hustle. I told him I'd be his first customer. And Melody, her social media is gone. Her reputation is shot. She's facing years of payments and anger management. All because she couldn't just be nice to people bringing her food, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Thanks for following along on this wild ride. I'm going to go eat some intentionally oversauced enchiladas in celebration. Story 8. She said, I don't do traditional gender roles. When I asked her to cook once after making her dinner for 3 years, I said, neither do I anymore. When she came home to find a professional chef teaching her replacement how to make my favorite meal. 31 male, been with my girlfriend Vanessa, 29, for 3 years, living together for 2. I love cooking, always have. Learned from my grandmother who ran a small restaurant for 30 years. It's my stress relief, my creative outlet, everything. When Vanessa and I started dating, she loved that I cooked, bragged to her friends about her personal chef boyfriend. I made breakfast before work, meal prepped our lunches, cooked dinner every single night. 3 years every single night. Last week I got hit with a massive project at work. 14-hour days including Saturday. Sunday night I'm dead on my feet. I asked Vanessa, hey, could you maybe cook tonight? Just something simple. There's chicken in the fridge or we have pasta. She literally recoiled like I asked her to clean a septic tank. I don't do traditional gender roles. I stared at her. What? Cooking is like housewife stuff. I'm a modern woman. I don't subscribe to those outdated expectations. Vanessa, I've cooked every meal for 3 years because you like it. That's different. I'm exhausted. I'm asking for help one time. She rolled her eyes. There's leftover Thai in the fridge. Just eat that. The leftover Thai was from Tuesday. It was Sunday. I checked. It was growing its own ecosystem. She ended up ordering sushi for herself. Didn't ask if I wanted any. I made myself a sandwich and went to bed. But something shifted in me that night. 3 years of cooking every meal and she can't make pasta one time because it's housewife stuff, while eating the food I make daily. Monday morning, I texted my buddy Carlos, who runs a culinary school downtown, asked if any of his instructors do private lessons. He hooked me up with Chef Isabella. She teaches the advanced courses and does private coaching on weekends. Booked a session for the following Sunday. My apartment, 2 p.m. Here's where it gets interesting. I also invited my neighbor Harmony from across the hall. She's this sweet, 26-year-old programmer who's always asking about my cooking when she smells it in the hallway. Mentioned she wanted to learn but didn't know where to start. Told Vanessa I wasn't cooking this week. Too busy with work. She laughed like I was joking. I wasn't. Update 1. Y'all asked for an update, so here we go. Monday stopped cooking. Vanessa didn't notice at first because she had lunch with coworkers. That night she comes home expecting dinner. Kitchen's empty. I'm on the couch playing PlayStation. Where's dinner? I told you I'm not cooking this week. Are you seriously still mad about Sunday? Not mad, just matching your energy. I don't do traditional gender roles either. She huffed and ordered takeout. Still didn't ask if I wanted any. I meal prepped myself a week of salads and sandwiches on Sunday night. I'm good. Tuesday she tried to wait me out. Came home, sat on the couch, kept glancing at the kitchen. 7 p.m. nothing. 8 p.m. still nothing. Finally ordered pizza at 8:3. Wednesday was when the entitlement really jumped out. She comes home with grocery bags, puts them on the counter and sits down. I bought groceries. Cool. So are you gonna cook? No, but I bought ingredients. Then you should cook them. I don't know how. YouTube exists. She actually stomped her foot. A grown woman stomped her foot. Thursday, she tried manipulation. Came home talking about how her co-worker's boyfriend cooks these amazing meals, shows me Instagram photos of his dishes. I just nodded and kept playing my game. Must be nice, she says, must be. Her boyfriend doesn't act like a child when asked to cook. Her boyfriend probably doesn't get told cooking his housewife stuff when he asks for help once in 3 years. She slammed the bedroom door so hard the frame shook. Friday was the funniest. She tried to cook. I heard her in the kitchen around 6 p.m. Lots of banging, some cursing, smelled something burning. Came out 45 minutes later with what I think was supposed to be pasta. The noodles were somehow both mushy and crunchy. The sauce was just ketchup and pepper. She took one bite and ordered Chinese. Still didn't ask if I wanted any, but jokes on her. I'd already eaten my prepped meal. Saturday, she finally tried asking nicely. Babe, I'm sorry about last weekend. I didn't mean it like that. Could you please cook dinner? Are you sorry or are you just hungry? Both. I appreciate the apology, but I need you to understand something. You've been eating my cooking for 3 years while apparently thinking it's beneath you. That's insulting. I don't think it's beneath me when you do it. Why? Because I'm a man? She couldn't answer that. Sunday today, the main event. Chef Isabella showed up at 2 p.m. sharp, full chef's whites, rolling case of professional equipment. Harmony came over in this cute apron she just bought, notebook in hand, super excited. Vanessa was in the living room when they arrived. Her face went through like 6 different emotions. Who's this? This is Chef Isabella. She's teaching Harmony how to make my favorite meal, my grandmother's braised lamb with rosemary potatoes. In our kitchen, my name's on the lease. Chef Isabella was absolutely professional. Set up the ingredients, explained each step to Harmony, let her do the hands-on work while guiding her. The smell was incredible, like restaurant quality incredible. Vanessa kept hovering. That's a lot of expensive ingredients for a cooking lesson. Chef Isabella, without missing a beat. Quality ingredients are the foundation of good cooking. Like respect is the foundation of a good relationship. I think I fell a little bit in love with Chef Isabella right then. Harmony was a natural, picked up the knife skills quickly, asked great questions. When she plated the final dish, it looked like something from a 5-star restaurant. This is amazing, Harmony beamed. I can't believe I made this. You did wonderfully, Chef Isabella said. With practice, you'll be cooking like this regularly. That's when Vanessa lost it. Are you replacing me? With the neighbor in front of me? Replacing? This is a cooking lesson. Harmony wants to learn a skill you think is beneath you. You're doing this to punish me. No, I'm doing this because I love cooking and want to share that with people who appreciate it. You've made it clear you don't. Harmony, bless her, tried to diffuse. Vanessa, there's plenty of food if you want to try some. I don't want your pity food. She stormed off to the bedroom. Chef Isabella packed up. I paid her plus a hefty tip for the dinner theater, and Harmony insisted I keep half the lamb since I bought the ingredients. We ate together at my dining table while Vanessa sulked in the bedroom. Best meal I've had in months, and I didn't cook a bite of it. Update too well, the situation has escalated in ways I didn't expect. Sunday night after Chef Isabella left, Vanessa came out of the bedroom around 10 p.m. I was cleaning the kitchen because I'm not a monster. I clean up after guests. We need to talk, okay? That was humiliating. What was? You bringing another woman into our home to learn cooking, a skill you refused to learn. It was a power play. It was a cooking lesson that I paid for my neighbor who's shown interest in learning. She slept on the couch that night. Her choice. Monday, I thought things might calm down. Nope. I came home to find she'd organized the kitchen, by which I mean she'd rearranged everything. My spice rack system I'd spent 2 years perfecting destroyed. My knife block moved to inside a cabinet. My cast iron pans in the oven. I thought since you're not cooking, we could use the space better, she said with this smug smile. It took me 2 hours to fix everything. While I was reorganizing, she sat on the couch eating McDonald's. Still didn't offer me any. Tuesday was psychological warfare. She started leaving cooking shows on the TV, just constantly. Gordon Ramsay yelling about risotto when I woke up, chopped when I got home. Great British Bake Off before bed. Thought you might miss cooking, she said innocently. I do miss cooking, just not for ungrateful people. That shut her up real quick, but today, Wednesday, is when she really showed her true colors. I get a text at work from Harmony. Hey, weird question, but did Vanessa just knock on your door looking for you? Turns out Vanessa went to Harmony's apartment while I was at work. Told her I was going through something, and it would be best for everyone if Harmony kept her distance. Tried to make it sound like I was mentally unstable and dangerous. Harmony, absolute legend, recorded the whole interaction on her doorbell camera. Sent me the video. Vanessa literally said he's not well. This whole cooking thing has made him snap. I'm concerned he might do something erratic. I was livid, came home early. Vanessa was on the couch, laptop open, browsing DoorDash. We need to talk about you harassing my neighbors. Her face went white. I don't know what you mean. I pulled up the video on my phone, watched her watch herself lying about my mental state. I was just concerned. You were just trying to isolate me from someone who dares to appreciate something you look down on. That's not. Vanessa, you need to leave. Excuse me, pack a bag. Go stay with your sister or your parents. We're done. You're kicking me out over cooking. No, I'm kicking you out because you tried to sabotage my friendships, lied about my mental health, and have shown zero respect for me or what I contribute to this relationship. I live here. You're not on the lease. You've been living here rent-free for 2 years while I paid everything. The only thing you contributed was attitude. That hit a nerve. I contribute. I buy groceries sometimes. The groceries you bought last week that you expected me to cook, those groceries, she started crying, but not sad crying, angry crying. You planned this. The whole chef thing was to make me leave. The chef thing was to teach someone who wanted to learn. You leaving is because you're showing me who you really are. And I don't like it. She packed a bag while sending probably 100 texts. I heard her on the phone with her sister, spinning some story about how I'm being controlling and abusive because I won't cook anymore. Before she left, she turned at the door. When you realize what you've thrown away, don't come crawling back. Vanessa, I've been carrying this relationship like a backpack full of rocks. Setting it down isn't throwing it away. It's relief. She slammed the door. 2 hours later, I made myself the best steak dinner I've had in years. Sent a photo to Harmony with the caption, "First peaceful meal in my own kitchen in days." She replied, "Looks amazing." Also, building security has a photo of Vanessa in case she tries to come back and bother anyone. Sometimes the revenge is just living well and eating well. Final update. Last update because I'm ready to close this chapter. The first few days after Vanessa left were interesting. She went to stay with her sister Laurel, who's apparently been getting an earful of Vanessa's victim narrative. Day 1. Got about 30 texts ranging from "I'm sorry, let's talk to your manipulative psycho." Didn't respond to any. Day 2. Laurel called. "What did you do to my sister? She's devastated. I stopped cooking for her and asked her to leave after she harassed my neighbor. She says you emotionally abused her by withholding food. I withheld cooking. She's an adult with DoorDash. She'll survive." Laurel hung up on me. Day 3. The belongings saga began. Vanessa wanted to get her stuff but didn't feel safe coming alone. Fine. I arranged for Saturday afternoon. Told her she could bring whoever Saturday. She showed up with Laurel and 2 friends. I had Harmony there as my witness. She volunteered, said she wanted to see how this played out. The entitlement was astronomical. She tried to take my grandmother's recipe box. That's mine. These are recipes I've been eating for 3 years. I have an emotional attachment. To food you think is housewife stuff? CBF for miles. Then she tried to take my KitchenAid mixer. The red one. My baby, I use this. When? Name one time I was going to learn. When? After you spent 3 years calling cooking beneath you. She also tried to claim half the cookware because it was communal property. I pulled up 3 years of credit card statements showing I bought every pot, pan, and utensil. The worst part, she'd filled her sushi takeout containers with my spices. My expensive spices. Found them in her bag when a bunch of saffron fell out. "Are you stealing my spices? I'll need them for my new place." For what? The cooking you don't do? She had to put them all back while her sister watched in second-hand embarrassment. The pettiest thing, she took all the takeout menus, every single one. Joke's on her. Everything's online now anyway. After she left, Harmony and I had tea and she told me something hilarious. Apparently, Vanessa had been texting her all week, trying to get dirt on me, asking if I'd been unstable or aggressive. Harmony just kept responding with cooking questions like, "What temperature do you roast chicken at? And how do you know when pasta is al dente?" But here's the part that really shows how karma works. Vanessa's been staying with Laurel, who has 3 kids and a husband. Guess what Laurel expected Vanessa to do to contribute while staying there? Cook dinners. I know this because Laurel called me last week, apologizing. I get it now. She's been here 2 weeks and hasn't cooked once. Says it's not her thing. Meanwhile, she's eating everything my husband and I make, criticizing how we season things and ordering $30 takeout meals on my credit card without asking. Sounds familiar. I told her she needs to contribute or find somewhere else to stay. She called me anti-feminist, her own sister. Also sounds familiar. Laurel lasted 3 more days before kicking Vanessa out. She's now at her parents' house, where her mom is apparently trying to teach her basic life skills at 29 years old. Meanwhile, my life's been fantastic. I've been cooking up a storm, made a huge batch of my grandmother's soup, and shared it with neighbors. Harmony and I have done a couple cooking exchanges where she practices recipes and we eat together. Just friends enjoying good food and appreciation for the effort that goes into it. Started a Sunday dinner tradition where I invite people from my building. Last week we had 6 people crowded around my table, everyone bringing something they made. The elderly guy from 4B brought homemade bread. The college kid from downstairs made a salad. Harmony made the lamb again. She's gotten even better at it. You know who texted during dinner? Vanessa. A photo of a burnt grilled cheese with, "This is your fault." I replied with a photo of our dinner table. "This is your loss." She blocked me after that. Victory, the best revenge? Unhappy. I'm cooking for people who appreciate it. My kitchen is organized exactly how I like it. My spices are safe and I never ever have to hear you. I don't do traditional gender roles while someone eats the labor of my love. And Chef Isabella, she invited me to guest teach a class at the culinary school about traditional family recipes. Turns out she was impressed with my grandmother's techniques. Harmony's planning to take the class. She says she wants to learn how to make that rosemary potato dish from scratch. Life's too short to cook for people who don't appreciate it. And it's definitely too short to stay with someone who thinks contributing to a relationship is beneath them while happily consuming the benefits. To everyone dealing with a similar situation, your efforts have value, your contributions matter. And you deserve someone who appreciates what you bring to the table, literally and figuratively. Now if you'll excuse me, I have a brisket that needs checking and a kitchen full of grateful friends waiting to enjoy it. Bon appetit, y'all. Story 9. My girlfriend said, "You're being controlling when I asked for 2 dates a week, so I stopped chasing entirely." What happened next destroyed her career and gave me the life I actually deserved. God, I'm still shaking as I type this. I need to get this out because my entire world just flipped upside down, and I think I'm finally understanding what self-respect actually means. I'm Noah, 26 years old, working as a QA engineer in Austin, Texas, and until recently I was dating Madison, let's call her Maddie, who's 25 and worked in social media for a PR firm on South Congress. We'd been together for 8 months, and I genuinely believed we were building something real. Typing that now makes me feel so incredibly naive. The first few months were perfect. Thursday tacos in East Austin, Sunday coffee walks down South Congress, weekend trips to Zilker Park. She'd tell her friends she was so proud I was working toward becoming a software development engineer in test. That's software development engineer in test for those wondering. I believed every word. I believed we wanted the same future, but around month 6, everything shifted. She went from texting me good morning every day to leaving me on read for hours. Our weekly date nights became, I'm swamped with work and endless rain checks. But here's what made my stomach drop: her Instagram stories. Rooftop parties at the Domain, shows at ACL Live, private events at the Long Center, always too busy for me, never too busy for, well, everything else. When I brought it up I got, "You're being insecure, Noah, I have a life outside of us." Look, she wasn't wrong about having independence, but there's having your own life and then there's treating your boyfriend like he's a backup plan you keep in your back pocket. 2 weeks ago, I did something that apparently made me controlling. I sat her down at this bright little cafe on South Congress and said exactly this. I need our relationship to have two-way effort. I'm talking 1 to 2 actual planned dates per week, set up 48 hours ahead. If you're genuinely busy, then propose an alternate time that works. She smiled that perfect smile and said, "Sure, babe, I'll try this week." That's when I made the decision that changed absolutely everything. I decided to mirror her effort exactly. No more being the guy who always initiates. No more overfunctioning. Just match her energy and see what happens. You guys, 2 weeks went by. Zero initiative from her side. Not one, "Hey, want to grab dinner?" Or "There's this show Friday, interested?" Nothing. But that's not even the part that shattered me. My roommate Tyler bartends on Rainy Street and knows everyone in Austin's social scene. He'd been close friends with Maddie since before we started dating. They met through mutual friends at some Domain rooftop party last year. Last week, he showed me something from her Instagram that made my blood freeze. A private Instagram story that he could see because he was still on her close friends list from their early friendship. It was a soft launch post showing some guy's hands on a guitar with the caption, "He gets it," with a sparkle emoji. The timestamp. Same exact night she texted me saying she had an early night in and couldn't hang out. I didn't confront her. Instead, I started documenting. Nothing psycho, just her text to me versus what appeared on her social media. The patterns were, Jesus, they were undeniable. Here's what I discovered. She would text me saying work event ran late, exhausted with a sleeping emoji, but her Instagram story that same night showed her laughing outside ACL Live at 11 p.m. She'd text family dinner, can't do Sunday, but then post herself at bottomless brunch on South Congress with friends, location tagged and everything. She'd say feeling sick, need to rain check dinner, but then her story showed her at Franklin Barbecue, clearly not sick at all. Tyler said I should have called her out immediately, but something in me needed to see how deep this went. And guys, it went so much deeper than I ever imagined. 3 days ago, I discovered she'd been using her company email to get VIP access to events, not for work, but to bring this guitarist, I'll call him Jace, as her plus one. That's not just lying to me. That's potentially fraud. But here's where it gets absolutely insane. My company sponsors tech setups for Austin venues, and last weekend there was this big arts fundraiser at the Long Center. Guess who texted me an hour before asking if I could help get her and a friend backstage? I knew it was Jace. I knew she was literally asking me to use my professional connections to help her impress the guy she was cheating on me with. For the first time in 8 months, I said no. Her exact response: "You're being controlling again." That word, controlling. You know what's crazy? 6 months ago, that word would have destroyed me. I would have immediately started apologizing, explaining, probably bent over backwards to get her that access. But something had clicked. I wasn't being controlling. I was finally having standards, so I said, "I understand you're disappointed. I have 2 guest passes for the main event if you'd like those instead." And then I did something I'd never done. I went completely offline. Phone on silent, focused on my actual job, gave those guest passes to Tyler and his friend Jenna instead. Reddit, what happened next? What I discovered about how far this betrayal actually went. I can't even process it all yet. Because it turns out when you stop chasing someone who doesn't want to be caught, the truth has a way of surfacing all on its own. And the truth about Maddie was so much worse than I thought. Update 1. Several of you asked for specifics about the timeline I mentioned, so here's what I documented during those 2 weeks when I stopped initiating anything. Tuesday. She texted, exhausted from work, staying in tonight, but Tyler saw her Instagram story showing her at a rooftop bar in the Domain at 9 p.m. Thursday. Sister needs help moving, but she was tagged at Jester King Brewery with a group of friends. Saturday, work event I have to attend, but her private story showed those guitar playing hands with the caption Saturday vibes and a music note. The following Tuesday, feeling sick, rain check on dinner. But there was a clear photo of her at Franklin Barbecue, definitely not sick. Friday, early morning tomorrow, need sleep, but Tyler spotted her laughing outside Stubbs at 11:30 p.m. Look, I get it. Plans change. But she wasn't just changing plans. She was creating elaborate lies about why she couldn't see me while simultaneously documenting her real activities for everyone else to see. And this Jace situation. God, after posting yesterday, I went down a rabbit hole. This soft launch thing had been going on for over a month. Little glimpses of his East Austin loft. I recognized the warehouse-style windows, his coffee order at radio, his hands on that dang guitar. She was basically documenting an entire secret relationship for her close friends while telling me she was too busy for us to spend time together. But here's where your comments really opened my eyes. Someone said, "She's using you for stability while test driving the upgrade." Holy crap. That's exactly what this was. See, Jace is this indie musician, does open mics at Cheer Up Charlie's, has like 2,000 Instagram followers, the whole tortured artist aesthetic. Creative, unpredictable, probably broke most of the time. Meanwhile, I'm the stable guy with the steady tech job, reliable income, always available when her creative musician inevitably flakes. I was her safety net. Her plan B, her convenient option. Now about that work ethics violation. Tyler knows this bartender Jenna who works Rainy Street and sees everything. She'd been watching this whole situation and felt bad for me. Tyler had introduced them months ago when Jenna was helping with event coordination for some Domain parties. She has connections throughout Austin's hospitality scene. She confirmed that the night Maddie claimed to have a work event, there was no work event. Maddie had used her company email to request VIP wristbands for Stubbs under the pretense of client relationship building, then used them to take Jace. That's fraud, right? Using company resources under false pretenses. But wait, it gets so much worse. Remember the Long Center gala where she wanted backstage access? I didn't tell you the full story. My startup handles tech for Austin venues, registration systems, live stream equipment. I had legitimate backstage credentials for the event. An hour before the gala, Maddie texted, "Babe, coming to the event with a friend from work. Can you get us backstage? Would love to show him the behind-the-scenes tech stuff." With heart eyes emojis. I knew friend from work meant Jace. She was asking me to use my professional access to impress the guy she was cheating on me with. When I said no and offered guest passes instead, she called me controlling and hung up. So I gave those passes to Tyler and Jenna, and that's when everything unraveled. During my break from the tech booth, I found Tyler and Jenna at the bar. Jenna shook her head when she saw me. "Noah, honey, she's been bringing that musician to every event she can access. My manager at radio mentioned seeing them together weeks ago. Everyone knows except you." That hit different. Everyone knows except you. I realized this wasn't just about me discovering her lies. This was about the entire Austin social scene watching me get played while I remained completely oblivious. But here's the part that still has me reeling. Friday night, I was at Luster Pearl with coworkers when someone tapped my shoulder. "Noah, you're Noah, right?" I turned around. It was him. Jace. The soft launch guitarist from all her stories. "Yeah," I said, "and you're Jace." His face went completely white. "Oh damn, look man, I think we need to talk. Maddie told me about you, but I think there's some stuff you should know." And that's when I realized she'd been feeding him a completely different story about us. "What did she tell you exactly?" I asked. "That you guys dated for like 3 months last year but broke up because you couldn't handle her independence. Said you've been trying to get back together but she kept turning you down because you were. Well, she said you were kind of intense about it. 3 months. Last year. Intense ex who wouldn't take no for an answer. Meanwhile, we'd been officially together for 8 months, and I was supposed to meet her parents next month. We've been together for 8 months, I told him. She literally has a drawer at my place. Jesus. He sat down heavily. "Noah, I need to tell you something. After hearing your name, I did some asking around. Maddie's been telling people different stories about your situation. Some friends think you're broken up, others think you're figuring things out, and a few thought you were just casual." We ended up talking for 30 minutes. Turns out, Maddie had been compartmentalizing her social circle, telling different groups different versions of our relationship status. She'd convinced Jace that I was a persistent ex, while telling our mutual friends that we were going through a rough patch, but working on it. The creativity of her deception was actually impressive in the most disturbing way possible. "Man," Jace said, "she made you sound like you had some serious attachment issues, but you seem completely normal." "I asked for 2 dates a week," I said. He bought me a beer. We talked about Austin music. Before leaving, he said something that stuck with me. "You know what's weird? She always seemed really nervous when I'd suggest posting anything together. Now I know why." Saturday morning, I woke up to 19 missed calls from Maddie. Jace had his own conversation with her Friday night. The voicemails were intense. Crying, yelling, accusations that I'd ruined everything, demands that I stay out of her business, threats about how I was sabotaging her happiness. But the last voicemail was different, quieter. "Noah, I think there might be a problem at work. Someone contacted my boss about some event stuff, and Jace is asking questions I don't know how to answer. I know you're angry, but can we please talk? I think I made some really bad decisions." Some bad decisions. 8 months of compartmentalized lies, creating elaborate stories to avoid spending time with me, using her work position to impress another guy, building parallel relationships while painting me as an unstable ex to justify her behavior. Some bad decisions. Update 2 coming tomorrow. Because what happened when her boss started asking questions, and the conversation where she finally told me the truth about everything. Reddit, you're not going to believe how deep this actually went. Update 2 Reddit. I thought Update 1 was intense, but this past week has been absolutely unreal. So remember Jenna, the bartender who'd been watching this situation. Well, it turns out that Jenna used to work in events coordination before switching to bartending, and she takes professional ethics seriously. When she realized what Maddie had been doing with company resources, she didn't just feel bad for me. She was genuinely concerned about the impact on Austin's tight-knit event industry. Rather than gossip about it, Jenna contacted Maddie's company through their ethics hotline. She provided specific dates and venue information about VIP access that didn't match any legitimate client relationships. Monday morning, while I was in stand-up talking about automated testing frameworks, Maddie was getting called into her boss's office. This is where I need to clarify something from my last update. I said before that somehow the email made its way back to me, but that's not quite accurate. What actually happened was that Jenna later told Tyler that Cara Whitfield, Maddie's account director boss, had contacted her as part of the investigation. Jenna shared the general gist of what was happening, but obviously couldn't give exact details. From what Tyler relayed to me, the investigation was swift because Maddie's company has a zero-tolerance policy for misuse of client relationships and company resources. In the events industry, reputation is everything, and any hint of ethical violations can destroy business partnerships. That's when my phone exploded with texts from Maddie. "Noah, we need to talk now, and can you please call me? This is urgent. And I know you're mad, but this is serious. And did you say something to someone about work stuff? And Noah, please, I was debugging test automation and honestly." For the first time in months, my work felt more important than whatever chaos Maddie had created. During lunch, I finally called her. "Noah, I'm freaking out. Cara is asking about specific events and I don't know what to say. Someone reported me." "Reported you for what?" I asked, though I already knew. "For using company access for personal stuff. Noah, they're doing a full investigation. I could lose my job." "You don't understand, this could ruin my entire career." And here's the moment that crystallized everything. In 8 months of dating, she had never once asked about my day, my SDET preparation, my career goals, my projects. But the second her professional life was threatened, suddenly she desperately needed me. "Maddie," I said, "I didn't report anything to anyone. But if someone did, maybe they had valid concerns about professional conduct." Long pause. "You're being really cold right now." "I'm being clear. There's a difference." She hung up on me. Wednesday, Tyler came home with an update from Jenna. Word was that Maddie had been placed on administrative leave while they conducted their investigation. Apparently, once they started digging, they found more than just the Stubbs incident. There was a pattern going back several months of questionable resource usage that Maddie had apparently assumed would never be scrutinized. But Friday night is when this story took its most insane turn yet. I was meeting coworkers at Luster Pearl when I spotted Jace at the other end of the bar. We made eye contact and he walked over. "Hey Noah, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "How long were you and Maddie actually together?" "Like officially together, 8 months. Why?" His expression got dark. "She told me you guys dated casually for a few months but never made it official. Said you wanted more but she wasn't ready for anything serious." "Casual, never official." "We were talking about moving in together," I said. "I was supposed to meet her parents next month." "Damn." He sat down heavily. "Noah, I need to tell you something." After we talked last week, I confronted her about all the different stories. About you, about the timeline, all of it. "How'd that go?" She completely lost it. Started crying, saying I didn't understand the complexity of the situation and that she'd been trying to protect everyone's feelings. Then she said something that really bothered me. "What?" "She said you'd been in therapy for relationship trauma, and that's why she couldn't just cut contact cleanly. Said you were fragile, and she was worried about triggering some kind of episode." I almost laughed. "Relationship trauma?" "Yeah, she painted this whole picture of you as someone who'd been hurt before and couldn't handle rejection. Said that's why she had to be so careful about how she handled things with you." The audacity was actually impressive. She turned my completely normal request for regular dates into a mental health crisis that required her careful management, justifying months of lies as protecting me. "So what did you tell her?" I asked. "That I don't date people who are in complicated situations with exes, period, and that if she wanted to be with me, she needed to handle whatever was going on honestly. And she swore she'd resolve everything this weekend, said she'd have a final conversation with you and then we could start fresh without all the drama." Jace pulled out his phone and showed me a text from Maddie sent yesterday. "Hey babe, Just wanted you to know I had that honest conversation with Noah. Everything's finally clear between us. Want to celebrate at that new rooftop place tonight?" I stared at the message. "We haven't talked since she hung up on me Monday." "I know," he said. "That's why I'm here. No, or I think there's something really wrong with how she processes reality." We talked for another hour. Jace told me that in their time together, Maddie had consistently painted herself as the victim of unreasonable people. Her demanding boss, her complicated ex, that would be me, her judgmental friends who didn't understand her complex emotional situation. She was always the reasonable person trying her best in impossible circumstances. "The thing is," Jace said, "I believed her because she seemed so sincere, like she was genuinely trying to navigate these difficult relationships with grace." "What changed your mind?" "Meeting you. You're nothing like she described." And then I started thinking about other inconsistencies. How she never wanted me to meet any of her friends. How she'd panic if I suggested posting anything together. How she always had elaborate explanations for why simple things were complicated. That night, I drove home around Lady Bird Lake thinking about patterns. Not just Maddie's lies, but my own responses. How many times had I accepted elaborate explanations for why simple things were complicated? How many times had I made excuses for behavior that my gut knew was wrong? Saturday morning brought 17 new voicemails from Maddie. Her investigation had concluded. The result wasn't good. According to Tyler's update from Jenna, Maddie had been terminated effective immediately. The company had found evidence of systematic misuse of client relationships and company resources that violated their professional conduct policies. The final voicemail was barely whispered. "Noah, I lost my job, everything's falling apart. Jace won't even look at me. I know I messed up, but I think I was just scared and confused. Can we please meet? I need to explain what really happened. I owe you the truth." The truth. After 8 months of elaborate lies, strategic omissions, and gaslighting, she was finally ready to tell me the truth. But here's what I realized, sitting in my apartment looking out over the Austin skyline. I didn't need her truth anymore. I'd already learned everything I needed to know. Final update coming soon, because her explanation and my response. It turns out there's a massive difference between someone wanting you back and someone actually respecting you. Update 3, she finally told me the truth. And honestly, I wish she hadn't. Thanks for all the support, Reddit. The DMs from people saying this helped them recognize similar patterns in their own relationships. That means more than you know. So Maddie lost her job, lost Jace, and finally asked to meet for that truth conversation she kept promising. I agreed, but on my terms. 1 hour, public place, no expectations, just conversation. We met at Medici Cafe on Guadalupe Street. She looked rough hair in a messy bun, wearing jeans instead of her usual designer outfits. The polished social media coordinator facade was completely gone. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," she said, sitting down. "How are you holding up?" That's when she started crying. I handed her napkins and waited. "I need you to understand what really happened, why I made those choices." Here's what she told me. She'd been feeling suffocated since month 4. Not because I was controlling, but because I represented everything she thought she was supposed to want. Stability, reliability, a partner with goals. She felt pressure from her family to settle down with a good guy, and I checked every box. But she missed excitement and unpredictability. When she met Jace, he represented everything she felt like she was missing. The artistic lifestyle, the spontaneity. "I wasn't ready to give up the security of being with you until I knew if things with Jace would work out," she said. "So I was your backup plan." "No, I just needed time to figure out what I really wanted." "Maddie, you were in a full relationship with another guy while lying to me about being too busy to see me twice a week. What would you call that?" Long pause. "I was confused." She started crying again. Said Jace had turned out to be unreliable and self-centered. Said she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. Said she missed how safe I made her feel. Then came the ask. "What we had was real. I can change. I can be the girlfriend you deserved." 6 months ago, hearing those words would have made me weak in the knees. But sitting there, I felt nothing, just clarity. "Maddie, I don't want to be with someone who has to try to care about me. In a healthy relationship, prioritizing your partner happens naturally because you love them." "But I did love you." Maybe, but you didn't choose me when it mattered. I can't build a future with someone who sees me as the safe choice while looking for something better. She got defensive, said I was being unfair, that everyone makes mistakes. I'm not punishing you, I said. I'm just not available for this anymore. I paid for both coffees, wished her well, and left. 3 days after that conversation, I got the SDET promotion I'd been working toward. 20% raise, stock options, the works. Turns out when you're not constantly anxious about whether someone wants to spend time with you, you have energy for everything else. I adopted this 3-year-old pit mix named Pixel who'd been returned twice for needing too much attention. We run Lady Bird Lake every morning now. Last weekend, I threw a dinner party and met this UX designer, Sarah, who has the most infectious laugh I've ever heard. She asked for my number. The best revenge isn't elaborate schemes or public humiliation. It's building a life so good that going backwards becomes impossible. To anyone dealing with something similar, you deserve someone who chooses you every day, not someone who keeps you around for convenience. The most radical thing you can do sometimes is just walk away with your dignity intact.